Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first episode of the Cup Roundtable. My name is Jillian Robinson. I am the General Assistant at Cup of Hemlock Theatre, and I will be your host and mediator for today's discussion. Now, today is our first installment of the Cup Roundtable series, which is a sister series to our The Cup Interview and the Cup Review. And these roundtables, they'll be pumped out periodically. And basically, they will be highlighting discussions or topics that are surrounding our theater world today and in our past. And today's topic is Shakespeare and Gender. So sort of launching from our review series where we just had basically the summer to watch and review Stratford's Shakespeare Film Festival. The topic of Shakespeare and gender and the positive and negative opinions that kind of are associated with this topic came up quite frequently. So our discussion today, we have some amazing, incredible artists and panelists to share their opinion and discuss a list of questions that the Cup of Hemlock Theatre team has cobbled together to do with Shakespeare and gender. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our amazing panel. So, Susan, I'm going to start off with you. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience with the Bard, if you've maybe acted or directed in Shakespeare, and what's your favorite Shakespeare play?
Sure. So, hi, everyone. I'm Susan A. Locke. I've been an actor for more years. I also am a director as well, and I'm currently writing as well, and theater making, if that makes sense. On my quick background, I did theater school in Prague, Czech Republic, and so my specialization is alternative and puppet theater. My relationship to the Bard is a tumultuous one, because I do love Shakespeare, but I also understand when actors say they don't. I don't like the pressure that people are given where because you're an actor, you have to like Shakespeare. I don't like that. I think you should just like what you like. And if Shakespeare's not your forte, that's fine. I love Shakespeare because I love the poetry. My experience with it, I have been in some shows. I've been in A Comedy of Errors, as well as Taming of the Shrew. And I did direct a Shakespearean show, but it was a mashup, but it was a horrible, horrible experience with the production side, but with the actor side, it was amazing. And it was interesting because we talked a lot about gender swapping and gender roles within the text. And my favorite Shakespearean play is Hamlet. I think it's because I also love Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. So I think that's the reason why I love Hamlet. But I've seen very like so many variations of Hamlet, and I don't know, there's just something about Hamlet that I really love. And,
Great.
And do you want to know what I'm drinking?
I would love to know what is in your cup. Yeah.
Okay. I've got water, and that's boring. And I've got coffee.
Amazing. Love that.
How do you take your coffee?
I take it like a wuss. I have put almond milk in it and honey.
Hey, that is creative advice.
It sounds delicious.
Yeah, love that. Mackenzie, if you'd like to let us know a little bit about yourself and the Bard.
Sure. Well, I mean, this is a fun new side of the panel to be on. So thank you, Joe, for having me, first of all. So my relationship with the Bard actually stems all the way back to my youngin' years when I attended the Stratford Shakespeare School. And I did that for 3 years. My dad was a big proponent of me learning the basics of theater. He was like, you have to go learn the roots. And Shakespeare's part of the root system of theater. So away you go learn Shakespeare. And I fell in love with the Bard from there. I mean, I got to perform Henry V, Midsummer twice, Tempest, and then getting to see all the festival shows as well throughout. So I then got to AD a production of Twelfth Night with my wonderful friend and podcast co-host Autumn Smith. So I got to do that as well. And then, yeah, I'm taking courses in acting, Shakespeare, things like that all along the way. So that's kind of my relationship with the Bard. I mean, the Bard has been definitely a major root system of my theater experience. and something that I've truly loved because I love the stories he tells. Like, I think he really does capture a lot of humanity in his stories, the full breadth of what we experience as human beings in his characters.
So in that vein, what would your favorite Shakespeare be?
Right now, I mean, it varies day to day. Right now, because of another fun little side project we're doing, Richard III, because I've been doing my Richard III due diligence for reading. I'm participating in on that. So Richard is being top of mind right now, but I do love that play. I think that's a wonderful political intrigue drama that is one of his great history plays. So
great. And what is in your cup today, Matt?
Well, I have two. So first off, I have my Crystal Light water, blueberry, blackberry flavored. And then I have my morning cup of Earl Grey tea in my favorite Les Miserables musical mug. So
wonderful.
I am drinking that as well with a little bit of honey. So
great.
Yeehaw. There we go.
Honey,
that is
a common through line so far of all of our drinks.
Honey is delicious.
And Emery Jade, we'll go to you next. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience with the Bard and such.
Hello.
Hello.
I have been studying Shakespeare, I guess, since high school. My first introduction to his text and the work that comes along with it, I guess, was with Twelfth Night in, I think that was grade 11. So him and I have been going at it for a number of years, but mostly on and off and mostly off. But I do appreciate the work that he has done, but I don't totally love him. Oops. Yeah, it's just I coming from theater school. I have a BFA in acting from the University of Windsor. So coming from theater school and realizing that theater and the way that it's made has been going on like since the dawn of time, and knowing that Shakespeare was only a few hundred years ago, I would like for people to realize that theater goes like past that when we look back on our history, and when we look on and what we describe as traditional theater, and that Shakespeare is, to be honest, like not needed, in my opinion. I mean, hey, listen, we can get more into that when we get into the discussion. And my favorite Shakespeare play, I think, is, it does vary, like with Mac, but I think I will stick with Othello right now.
Right.
And in my cup, I am drinking coconut water with some ice.
Ooh. Lovely. Oh, it's a little Moscow Mule cup you have going on there.
It
too.
is.
Beautiful. And last but certainly not least, Graham, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience with Shakespeare.
It's a pleasure. Thank you all for having me on this panel. I'm kind of a newcomer to this group and this forum, so it's really nice to be included, and I hope I don't piss anyone off, or I hope I can make some new friends with this, and hopefully I say something good. So I am a recent graduate of the University of Guelph's Theater Studies program. In 2011, I did a 3-week performance intensive program at Shakespeare Festival's Shakespeare School. And that's where Shakespeare first clicked for me. But I was studying it back to grade 9 with Twelfth Night and Julius Caesar in grade 10. And then I didn't really appreciate it. But then when I finally was playing Puck and I figured out, oh, I need to climb a tree. And as I did my monologue in a tree, suddenly it just clicked, and suddenly just Shakespeare made a lot more sense to me. And it's weird and it sounds really like new age and strange, but hey, acting. So at Guelph, though, I've kind of deviated away from performance. I've never actually acted in a full Shakespearean production. That's kind of on my bucket list. I'd like to act in many of them, but I've gone more towards the direction and writing side of theater through Guelph, and I'm currently enrolled in the MFA of Creative Writing at the University of Guelph Humber. And I definitely take a lot of writing cues from Shakespeare. I like that there's fairly minimal stage direction, long monologues that give the actor a chance to really work through an internal mental circumstance, and plays that can speak to a wide array of scenarios and circumstances across time periods and cultures. That I just think it just makes it very relevant. Like, Shakespeare is a very moldable canon overall. You can see it Hamlet done in a tent city, and then you can also see it done as a period piece, and then you can also see it done in like anywhere. I just love how moldable Shakespeare is. My favorite play does change, like with the seasons. I have loved Richard III quite, like Richard and I, we go way back. We're tight. I love The Tempest. It's got such great poetry, and it has, in my opinion, one of the happier endings, and that ending epilogue just can bring me to tears. Midsummer Night's Dream, I get a lot of hate among other scholars for liking Midsummer unironically, but I like how transformable that play is, and I've never laughed harder than in productions of Midsummer. And I am very fond of the Scottish tragedy, which I will not utter with respect.
Respect that, yeah.
And seeing productions of Othello at Stratford this past season, like, that was a life-changing production. I really appreciated just everything that play presents, and I think there's a lot that can be played with regards to that play. And what is in my cup? I do have a bottle of water, but I also have a local craft root beer produced by Nickelbrook Brewery here in Burlington.
Perfect.
Well done. Local
Love that.
applause. Graham, you go.
Amazing. So
Support local business.
Of course. So that is our amazing panel for today. And before we dive into the questions, I will just say what is in my cup today. So I have some coffee, finishing my coffee, and then I also have some water today as well. My favorite Shakespeare also changes with the seasons. Right now, Coriolanus is up there as my number one slot. Yeah, I would love to play Coriolanus one day too. So yeah. And then before we dive into, I'm just going to go around and we'll share our pronouns, just so that in discussion today, we have that in our toolkit too. So you can refer to me as Jillian or Jill throughout today, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. Susan?
I'm she, her, hers as well.
Mackenzie?
I'm he, him, his.
Great. And Emma Jade?
She, her, hers.
Amazing. And Graham?
He, him, his.
Amazing. And now we are going to kick off our panel, folks. So question number 1, we have, in this contemporary age, we are seeing more productions where females are taking on male Shakespearean roles. What are your general thoughts or first impressions about these casting choices? Emma Jade, would you like to kick us off with this?
Yeah. Basically, my first impression is, finally, cool, amazing. Maybe I'll go watch that. Because quote, traditional casting with Shakespeare plays kind of bores me a little bit, because we've been doing that for forever. So when it's finally seen that like these words can be molded by whatever human takes them on, it's like a breath of fresh air for me personally.
Great. Graham, do you have anything to contribute or piggyback off of, or?
Oh, boy, do I. I think that Shakespeare, like, gender bending in Shakespeare is a concept as old as Shakespeare itself. Like, back originally, men played all the roles, and I can't see any really viability in the logic that women don't belong on stage, because honestly, some of my favorite performers are women or female identifying. And traditional casting, like, to piggyback off of what you said, Emma Jade, like, traditional casting would not see a man of color play Othello until like the end of the 20th century. So too many thoughts. That is a whole other discussion. It's
I mean,
infuriating.
is it though? Is it a different discussion? Because I guess like in my world, like being a Black woman, I have to come as my whole self, including the woman part and including the Black part and including the actor part. So I have to come as one whole person to whatever I'm given as casting. And so we can't really divide it. Like it's all one thing, you know?
Yeah. And what I think I like about Shakespeare is that because it kind of addresses universal concepts such as like ambition and pursuit of power and tragic failure and like things, and also love and romance and like good things. There's good, there's bad, but these are all very human experiences that some of which cross culture and also cross gender. So I am personally all for like completely opening up Shakespeare casting because I believe that the best actors should get the role, and it doesn't matter who you identify as, what your skin color is, where you come from, if you have formal training or not. Like these should not be limitations on Shakespeare's work.
Susan?
Yeah, to piggyback off of Graham, my first reaction to this really is doesn't matter. For me, I've seen multiple productions of females taking on the main male character roles, and how I kind of see Shakespeare being done really is the essence of the characters, because it doesn't really matter what gender you are. We are all power hungry. We all want power, or we want love. I think the themes are so universal. The only thing I will say, and I may open a can of worms here, is it's when it's specific. So, for example, there's multiple plays where there's gender swapping, and that if you are going to gender swap, that may become confusing, because then are you gender swapping your actual gender? And that, I think that could be confusing. That could be really interesting. It could be really well done, actually. But as a whole, I just think, and I think that goes with any play, unless it's specific, then I think that's when you have to think about gender. But as in general, I really don't think it matters.
Mackenzie?
I mean, right off the top, I was like, of course, like cast whoever you want. I mean, if the director's vision and concept calls for that type of choice, then by all means do it. Don't ever let yourself be held back because it's like, well, my concept calls for a female Richard III. Then go and cast a female Richard III because that's your concept, and own your truth and do your production. What I do oppose, though, is when companies do this type of casting for the sake of a marketing gimmick, or being like, come see it just because, hey, you know, like we've never done this before. Like I'm hoping with the upcoming Hamlet production with Amaka in Stratford that it's not just going to become a marketing gimmick, and that this director, whoever they are, I can't remember the name, has done their dramaturgical due diligence and is going to support Amaka in her being the first female identified performer of color performing this role at the festival, and not just throwing her in there being like, it's a marketing gimmick. Come see it because it's the marketing gimmick. Because that, I just think, poisons the well and takes away from when a production does actually want to say something by doing this type of casting. So for me, I go, absolutely cast it, tell the truth, tell the story the way you want to tell it, but don't do it for the sake of a marketing ploy, because I think that comes across as really false and hurts the actor who's really trying to do something special with this role that they've been wonderfully cast as.
Graham, you had an interjection potentially there?
Yeah, more just an addition, not an interjection, because I respect everything Mackenzie has said. I've definitely seen productions kind of take that tokenish approach to casting, with specific regards to sexual orientation. Was the example that comes to mind. This past season, Merry Wives of Windsor featured they made the host of the inn a female and also made her a lesbian. But they did it in such a way that it was just like, here, look, we're putting a lesbian in the show. This character does not really have any specific romantic leanings one way or another. They're supposed to be the host who's kind of in all of the stories. There's no problem with making this character a lesbian, but there's also no reason to either. And it just seemed shoehorned in, and it just kind of took away from the production as a whole for me.
So segueing from this question into question number 2, because I was actually brought up how initially Shakespeare called for a lot of men playing these female roles. So the idea of gender bending kind of existed with the original productions of these plays. So when these plays were originally produced, all female roles were played by boys and men. And today, is there a place for the inverse? So example, all roles played by girls and women. And if you could pick one play from the canon to use as an example for this choice of casting, would it enhance the performance? And which would it be?
Who do you want to start?
Yeah, Mackenzie, you can start us off.
Sure. I mean, right off the top, when I was thinking about this question, the first one that came to my mind was Love's Labour's Lost. Because that play exists in this wonderful little bubble of its own time and place. It really doesn't get affected by other outer world things, so you can move it anywhere in the time spectrum. And by doing that, you open yourself up to so many things. Like my director brain just started going when I started thinking about, well, how could you do this? And I was like, well, you could do Love's Labour's Lost, like an all-female, a boarding school. So like it's that whole thing of, and then you open up the whole door of like love and sexuality being explored as well as gender. Like I think that play is a wonderful little microcosm play that you can really kind of have fun with these characters. Nothing really happens major in that play. It's a lot of just interrelationship and people falling in out of love, and it's comedy. So I think there's a lot of fun you could have by moving that play into a different time setting and really just having fun with that type of casting. Because I think, I think Love's Labours is a really fun, underrated play as well that deserves some fun attention.
Great.
Oh, Graham's snapping.
Completely agree. LLL. Love it.
Love it. Susan, do you have a specific example that this casting would enhance the performance for?
I might sound lazy, but it might be piggyback on my original answer. I kind of feel like, once again, it doesn't matter. Unless it's specific, it doesn't really matter. I guess one of my beefs is when women are cast in male roles, but they're playing it like a male. Then what's the point? That's what irks me when I see a production, because it's sort of like, then why use a woman? Just don't have them play a man. Just have them play a woman. Like that's what I don't get when I see some productions. Have them play the women, because there's a reason why you did that. I guess for me, it would be, I would be really interested to see the Scottish play all female as women. I think that would be really interesting. Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't think this is a new concept at all, but I just think that play would be so strong with just all women. And I would love to see that. I would love to see the dynamic between Mackers and Lady M. So it would be interesting.
Sure. Yeah. Lovely. Graham, how about your thoughts on this?
So I do agree with you, Susan, that seeing a woman play a man can be a little bit bothersome, just because there was a specific choice made, but it seems like, oh, we like you, but we want you to be a man instead. Like it's kind of undermining that performer's identity to say like, well, you would be better if you were this way. Possibly, that's a possible interpretation. I'm not saying that's my interpretation, because I also think that it can, for some characters, I think it can work really well, especially very subversive characters like Iago or Richard, because it's kind of one more secret that the audience knows that the other characters don't. Just one more layer of artifice and pretense, but through the suspension of disbelief, it kind of gets wrapped in. But that's neither here nor there. I do think that an entire female cast can be really cool with Shakespeare, because you can imagine a world of what would an all-female world look like, especially given that Shakespeare's plays were originally written from a very male-based societal perspective. And all the rules that were put in place were like mandated by male voices. So how would you see a play that's created from a male context, reimagined by female performers, a female perspective, kind of like living through these rules and norms? Do they question them? Do they roll their eyes at some of them? Or do they have their entirely own society? It's a good way of imagining a kind of ideal world. I love Jill Dolan's theories on the utopian potential of performance. So I definitely think theater has the ability to impact change in the world. The play that I will say I think could be benefited by this casting choice, I'm going to sidestep Midsummer Night's Dream, because that one I think could work with like a lot of different things because of the magical elements and because it's just supposed to be frivolous fun, and comedy is very accepting of a lot of things. But I'm going to answer Othello to be different. Because I think that because there's a lot of military presence, you have a really big opportunity to make a comment on women in uniform, women in the military. And what if you change military to be police? Like, just, it could be like, there are so many different, very powerful meanings in Othello. And what if Iago is instead a woman scorned rather than just a very jealous man? Like, I think that there's a whole Pandora's box of possibilities if you were to cast Othello that way. But that's all I'll say on that matter for now.
Great. Thank you so much, Graham. And Emma Jade, close us on.
Similar to what Graham said, I think that all of these plays can be enhanced by a cast of all women, because female perspective is important, and female embodiment is important to see on stage as well. So, like, automatically, if our brains are taking in that the whole cast is female, we really, because of like the way that Shakespeare has written these plays from the male perspective, we really take in the female perspective, and we really internalize that and kind of start to see the context of his plays a little bit differently. And I do like that. So I would never, I don't have a specific play because I really truly believe that all of them would benefit.
Great. Well said. So now, segueing a little bit more character specific with this conversation, takes us to question 3. What roles in the Shakespearean canon do you think are most conducive to being gender bent? So now we're going to particular roles as opposed to productions. So which would be most conducive to being gender bent, and why? So Graham, you have a couple or an example of for us to share?
I do, and I'm going to start off with the Tempest as a whole. I know we're talking about specific characters. I'll get there.
Yeah, no worries.
The Tempest, we've seen some gender-bending performances already. Helen Mirren played Prospero in a 2010 film. And then Martha Henry in 2018 played the role as well. I'm sure countless of other productions have done this with Prospero, because I think Prospero is a very ideal candidate, because it creates a very interesting dynamic between the male world of politics and intrigue that was Milan and Naples and Italy, that Prospero was supplanted from because perhaps her brother and her rivals could not handle a woman in a position of power. So they supplant her, and she gets to create her own world of the island that is a lot more feminine. You see this also in Cirque du Soleil's show Amaluna. They depict a female figure as the Prospero character. And the mother-daughter relationship between Prospero and Miranda is very different than a father-daughter relationship. I think that the father's, like, a male Prospero is more wanting to protect, shield, and like be very specific on who Miranda sees and kind of controlling. Whereas female, it's more, there is still that maternal desire to protect and you want what's best for your child. But there's a more of a natural dynamic between the two, I think, personally. Less of a mandating and more of a conversation. Gonzalo in The Tempest could also be a good gender swapped role, because what if Gonzalo is dismissed by the others not because he's a bumbling old fool, but rather she is a woman? So I think The Tempest has a lot of possibilities with gender swapping, not to mention Ariel, who is so fluid. It could be male, female, or anything in that spectrum. But comedy and romance generally works. Anything with magic, I think, could be used to explain. So Midsummer, or what's that other play? It's slipping my mind for now, but that's all I will say, because I feel I've rambled on long.
No, it's perfect. Great examples. Susan, if you have any specific examples where you think gender bending would work quite well, and why?
Yeah, I might get burnt for this, but I would have loved to see some historical plays being with gender swapping there. I can't really think of anything in particular, but I would love to see, and I know it has been done, Richard III. I haven't seen it myself, but I would have loved to see a female play Richard III. I know they did that. Didn't they do that recently at Stratford?
They did it with Shauna McKenna.
Either a year or two ago.
2011.
I remember that production.
I do too.
That long ago.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, okay. Oof, showing my age.
I did see. Yeah, don't talk about age. I did see King Lear at the Groundling Theatre's production, where it was Shauna McKenna that played King Lear or Queen Lear, and I'm gonna sound lazy, but it didn't matter. It absolutely didn't matter. It was interesting to see the dynamics between, like you were saying, Graham, earlier, the mother-daughter relationship and how that translated onto the stage. But to be very honest, it didn't make much of a difference. I've seen other King Lear productions with the male role, and it looked the same. Shauna McKenna, she was very talented, and she played it really well. So, but specific characters, I would like to see Richard III, and I know I might get roasted on this, but any of the Henrys would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, this negates what I said earlier, that it's specific, because these are historical plays. So I think it has to be really done in a very interesting way. Otherwise it won't work. Mm-hmm. Otherwise I will just be eating my words. And it has to be done really meticulously too. Because if it's just being done for the exploitation part, then it definitely won't work. But
Great.
I just think it would be interesting. And I would like to see Anthony Cleopatra, who played by a woman. I think that would be really interesting, actually, just to see their love and dynamic between two women. I think that would be interesting.
Lovely. Thank you for that. Emerjay, do you have any specific roles that you think gender bending would work really well, and why?
I didn't have an answer until Susan started talking.
Love that.
I too would like to see the histories performed by women, because these are plays and they don't have to be accurate, and they're theater, so why can't we do that? And yeah, I think that'd be super, super cool. I also would love to see, I forget like all of the names of the characters in this show, but I would love to see A Winter's Tale and having both of the kings being played by women, and how that dynamic would work.
Lovely example. Yeah. To a play that I feel like is somewhat like sheltered in the canon. You see it pop up here and there, but it doesn't usually get a spotlight that it deserves. So yeah, that would be a really interesting interpretation for sure. Mackenzie? Graham.
Sorry, Winter's Tale is definitely weird just because it's one of the romances. So it's kind of like in its own little bubble over there. And it's strange because it has this weird happy ending. There's like, everything's good in the end. I'm like, but look, all this happened. Someone got eaten last year.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
But that's the fun part of the show.
Yeah.
The most iconic line. It's stage direction.
It's so good.
Lovely. Mackenzie, how about you close us off? Any specific gender bending?
Well, I mean, piggybacking off Graham, I automatically said any of the mystical, magical characters, I think, are so open to interpretation, because that's the director's world. I mean, if you want to do an entire world of the mystical fairies in Midsummer, but have them all be transgender, go for it. I mean, once again, that is the director's vision and the director's world, and you do you. If that is the way you see that world, then play. Go ahead. That's your sandbox to play in. So I also think Ariel, once again, like the Plummer version had a female play Ariel, and then the Martha Henry one had a male play Ariel. But when we talked about in our Tempest review, we're like, anybody could play Ariel. Like Ariel, once again, that thing is a water air spirit. So you could you could even go like full Tinkerbell on stage and just have it be a light that then is narrated off stage, and you could do that version if you wanted to.
I've seeing it done with a puppet on like a long pole just kind of floating about,
cool.
And I've seen it like you could even go full on androgynous, like not specific to either. Like that is Ariel.
Yeah, I think Caliban, depending on how you do Caliban, like if you want to be like Native Islander, like, and go that route and be like, honor who Caliban is, or you can go the full-on fishy route and make him a non-human entity, which we've seen as well. So if you want to do Caliban that way, you can most certainly bend and do whatever you want to Caliban. I think that's a fun game you can play on that character. I think worldly characters, though, Romeo from Romeo and Juliet, I've heard that proposed a lot, and I'm like, yeah, do it. Like, play with that dynamic. And piggybacking off Emerjade, King Leontes from Winter's Tale, I think because of that, his trajectory of story and that relationship he has with Queen Hermione, I think that you could really get into some fun gender politics. I have other ones, but we're going to save those other ones for other questions because there's another one that I had. Susan.
Yeah, Susan, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say something, and bless you, Graham. I saw you sneeze. Yeah, Mac, the only thing that I think triggered me just a little bit when you were saying about the mystical plays where if the director wants to do transgendered in Midsummers, why do the fairies have to be the mystical, the transgenders have to be mystical? Because then it's already typecasted as them being labeled as, oh, they're different creatures. And I personally don't like that. And I think it would be interesting if it was the opposite of that. So all the transgender characters played the main characters and all the straight people played the mystical characters. Instead.
I'm totally down for that. That was just a random example I pulled out of the top of my head. That wasn't being this is the only way to do it. No, you can go any which way. Once again, it's that director's sandbox.
Yeah, I'm just offering that as well, just because I don't, and I know that's one of the further questions, just don't want to label others as others because they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, Graham, you want to?
I think I remember kicking off the idea of like mystical or magical plays being better. So I just want to revisit that just quickly to say that I think that it's more the tone of the entire piece that I think lends itself to it, because I remember Kathy McKinnon said that she directed a production of Midsummer where the love juice of the flower the Puck went around with anointing people's eyes with was actually HIV. And so it was a much darker interpretation of people getting HIV in the woods as they go off. And it was like to comment on the spread of that disease. And it was like, just, again, blew my mind. I think it's just the tone of the piece that allows you to play around, not only with the fairy characters, but also with the people who find themselves in the magical world of the forest. What is the forest? Is the forest a modern day city? Is the forest the internet? Is the forest what could it be? It could be literally anything. So I just think the mystical pieces do well because they're a little less grounded in reality, and there's a little more room to bend things any which way you want. Any character, I've seen it where there are no Aegeus or Theseus or Hippolyta or any of them. They're all played by the chorus and they share the lines. So I think they just have the biggest wiggle room.
Yeah, Susan?
Just to be quick, Graham, you and I got to talk because I saw Midsummer's production and it was in Czech and it was really interesting. And I don't want to get into it because I want to save for the other questions, but it ended as a tragedy. It was really interesting, where the tone was World War II, and Puck's soliloquy at the end was burying everyone because everyone died. It was really interesting. We'll talk. We'll talk later.
I want to hear about this production.
Love that.
Oh my God.
It's probably the best. It was the best Midsummers I've ever seen because I'm very, very bored of that play. But it was the best production I've ever seen.
Great. Love that potential tangent conversation coming to a Zoom room near you. So segueing us to question number 4, and this question has kind of been subtly answered throughout our conversation so far, but to kind of scope in a little bit more to it, we are taking the opposite approach now to question 3. So what roles in the Shakespearean canon do you think are most resistant to being gender bent, and reasons why you might think that? Emerjade, I'll start with you because so far you seem to think there maybe aren't any. So if there's any, That's
all. Yeah, none of them resisted. I think they all actually kind of encourage it. with like the lens that we have now of being in 2020 and where we are, like why would we resist gender bending at all?
Right. Mackenzie?
Oh boy. Here
okay.
is the minefield. Okay. So piggybacking a little bit off Susan, because she talked about with the history plays, and I think you can. I mean, once again, you can gender bend anything you want, like as long as you support the gender bending and don't just, as we said, gimmick it up. So with the history plays, I think that those plays are a really slippery slope to go down that road on, because history plays, once again, like they are a very unless you're really playing with the time and place of it, like history plays are history, and history is history. I'm always really tentative about doing too many things with twisting history, because I don't like when people just twist history and ignore history, because we don't learn anything from history if we don't do history. Like that's the thing. Like you can say a lot with the history that you're playing with, like Richard III, where the women aren't. Yet there are a lot of powerful, but still Richard is controlling the chessboard. I think you can play a lot in there with women's power in that time period and what was going on, because there's a lot of powerful women within those history plays. Like even King John, the mother, I forget her name, she is a very powerful player on the chessboard. So I think there's a lot of games you can play within those history plays, and I just worry that if you start changing and twisting things too much without doing your dramaturgical due diligence, you can head down a really slippery slope of misrepresenting history. And some people, audiences, if they don't read the history book, can really misinterpret history, and then we go in a really weird direction. So I think history plays are the ones I'm most tentative about. Not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying you got to do some really, as Susan said, some really good dramaturgical due diligence to make that work.
Graham, I saw your hand go up first, and then
Emerjade was up first. So
okay, sure.
I will defer for now.
The thing about, for me personally, I'm not going to deny anything you said, but history is already written. It's already been told. We already know what history is. And in the context of historical plays, it is still a play. Because if we're talking about history, then what happens in these plays isn't exactly what happened, because no one was there. So we can't say that this is the thing that happened or the thing that didn't happen. So why couldn't we, like, we can interpret and cast whoever we want in whatever these plays are, because again, they are plays and they are playgrounds for people to lift language. So why do we need specific bodies to do that? That's me. Go ahead, Graham.
Graham, yeah, you were.
Yeah, so this will be, I won't start my own comment. This is just responding to Mackenzie. So I agree. Like when I was thinking of this question first, like I did think the histories as well. That I was looking at my complete works and I'm like, looking at just the list of plays. I'm like, which one? And I was really having trouble kind of coming up with some. So the histories came up to me first. But I also want to bear in mind that this is history as written by Shakespeare. So that isn't necessarily historically accurate. Henry VIII, for example, it can be played a number of different ways. You can play it that Henry was already kind of pushing Catherine of Aragon out and Anne Boleyn was taking her place. Or you can play it that he actually really loved Catherine of Aragon and it was more the politics that was encouraging him. Like you can play it so many different ways. And also, yeah, it's 2020. What's gender? Like, I come on. It's also might be interesting to see Henry VIII played as a woman, because like I know I was talking to my mom about this and she's like, women don't act that way. I'm like, okay. I think they could, but you know, like that's fun to put, like let's chew that one out on the table for a sec, for a hot minute. So but thinking that it was definitely a biased view of history, because who was Shakespeare writing for? Shakespeare was writing for the royal family, who of course really want to see other royals portrayed nicely. We know what happened with Richard II when you put on a play about a king being supplanted. That play gets banned. It does not get performed until after the monarch is dead, because they feel threatened, and you know, for having all that power, they seem awfully nervous with it. So I just think that because history is a creative interpretation of history, there is that wiggle room.
Absolutely. I think there's wiggle room within the history, but I do agree with Susan that you do have to make sure you're doing you're doing your dramaturgical due diligence as well.
Not haphazardly.
Exactly. Haphazardly, that's a dangerous road to walk.
Which I'd say that can apply to any play. Like, don't be half-assing your job. Like, you're here to put on a good show, make commentary, like whatever you believe theater is about, do it well. Because like you owe it to the art, to the craft, and most importantly to yourself.
Yeah. So to segue into a question.
Susan didn't go.
Oh, Susan, sorry. Hello.
Her answer.
That's okay.
We had a lot of discussion with this one, so there we go, Susan.
No, I love it. I love this discussion so far. I guess I said it earlier, but I find that a lot of the even comedies, when the gender roles are switched, it's always the women switching into men roles. And so I think those roles specifically would be weird if they were originally, if they were women roles, but played by men, and they're swapping gender to be women to woo the women or the men. So like I said earlier, if the play's specific about gender swapping already, and then you're doing a double gender swap, I just think as an audience member, unless dramaturgically, if you do it really well if the play's about gender, it could be interesting. But I just feel like if you gender swapped women roles to men, and especially when they gender bend, I think that's when I think it would be confusing and weird. So roles in particular, as you like it, that would be weird, I think. Or and comedy bears is fine because they're just gender. It's not gender; it's identity swapping. But I'm trying to think any other like female to male roles. So
Portia,
maybe.
Portia.
Yeah, Portia. Right. There you go. Yeah,
great. So that's actually a lovely segue to question number 4, which we can it's kind of sort of a playground dramaturg question. So, we are question number 5. Are there any female roles? So this is wonderful coming from piggybacking off Susan's last response. Are there any female roles in the canon that are potentially befit to a male identifying performer? And like, for example, along the lines of a Lady Bracknell from The Importance of Being Earnest. So Susan, I'll have you kick this off because that reaction, yes. And it's segueing a lot from your last response. So
yeah, I just think Lady Bracknell pisses me off. Just that character pisses me off. Okay. I do like The Importance of Being Earnest.
Right.
But when you gender swap like that, I think it pisses me off. Once again, I have nothing about gender swapping males taking over female roles, but it's just because we're already talking about, because I've noticed a lot of our answers, it's females taking over male roles. Unless it's an all sex play and they're playing that gender, I think that to me is more interesting. So for example, original Shakespearean plays were played by all men. Well, let's have them play all men. So if we're going to do, if we're going to do Midsummers, and once again, it's that mystical aspect, make them gay or make them all male, then to me, that would be interesting. But to purposely like put Lady M as a male, I don't know, that could be interesting too. But once again, it's what I said earlier. I hate it when males are playing females. Like, I know in Lady Bracknell, there's many renditions of males playing that role, and that always pisses me off.
Emma Jade,
because it would.
Go ahead. Yeah, Emma Jade.
I don't got much to say upon this, because I don't know. The answer is no. I don't think that any female roles are potentially befit to male identifying performer.
Okay. And Mackenzie?
I'm with Emma, dude. Like, I went through my text last night trying to find one because I was like, there's got to be at least one that you could really justify doing the swap with. I'm like, no, Shakespeare really kind of back it, like he kind of went. I didn't really lend it that way. Like, I it's weird.
Taming of the Shrew. That would be interesting.
I mean, absolutely. I think that'd be interesting. I think that'd be a really new way to do Taming of the Shrew. I think doing having a Catherine as a male. Actually, now I'm really interested to see that. My brain's not working.
Susan, high five.
A lot of exploration happening on this chat. But
Absolutely. My director brain is whirring.
Yeah.
But like right off the top of my head and going through the canon, I was like, "There's no." You could do it once again. You can do it with anything. Like I was looking up at the Globe's recent productions. They did a production where all the men played the women characters in Twelfth Night, where Oscar winner Mark Rylance took on the role of Olivia. And I looked at some clips of it. And I was like, okay, that's very clear. They were trying to do some Elizabethan casting experiments. So good for them. But like, is there a role that I think demands that a male take on become the female character? I was like, not really. I think, yeah, not really. I'm gonna leave it there for now.
Juliet, I think that would be interesting too.
Oh,
Juliet.
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, sorry. I just interject.
Keep trickling
sorry,
in. No, I love it. Emma J, did you have just a segue before I move to Graham?
I was also just gonna say, like, who even decided that Lady Bracknell needed to be a man in drag, and how did that help the production? How did that help the text? Why couldn't it have just been a woman?
That's a really good question, because I know two of the productions I've seen of Importance of Being Earnest has been a male playing Bracknell, and even when we did it in high school, I was cast as Lady Bracknell, so I got to do.
Oh, Lady Bracknell's in the house.
I love, like, don't get me wrong, I would love to get my teeth back into Lady Bracknell again, because that is a really fun role to play. And I mean, late great Brian Bedford did it in Stratford. Yeah, and he was phenomenal. I loved that performance. But once again, I don't know where.
Sorry.
Love that.
Yeah,
but once again, I don't know where that came from. I think that's a great thesis to explore. Like, when did this type of casting for Lady Bracknell start to happen?
She's like, let me write this down.
I think that's a great thesis thing to explore of when did that happen and why did that happen. Was that I don't know if the original production of Ernest did that and that was an Oscar Wilde comment. I don't know.
But isn't that also a gimmick? But isn't that also a gimmick, which kind of contradicts what you were saying earlier?
I think so. I definitely think it's now become a gimmick. I don't know if originally it started out as a gimmick. Like, I don't know if somebody originally did do it as like a statement to make about this character, and now it's become the gimmick, or if it always started out as a gimmick. I don't know. This is a bigger history theater question.
I think I have an MFA thesis for when I decide to go back to school.
Amazing! Good, great.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I'm not going back to school. I hate institutions, but to research.
Love that. And Graham, you want to scope us back to close us off this? Do you think in the Shakespeare canon, is there any female roles that potentially can be given to male identifying performers?
So I'm of the opinion that, because I've done a lot of drag performance and I have a lot of fun playing female roles, but it's not to say that it's necessary of any role. I think that it's a directorial or dramaturgical choice. There are some roles that can lend itself better, but I think that any role, as I've said, what's gender? It's 2020, people. Any role can be played. I would love to see a same-sex Romeo and Juliet, whether it's two women or two men. I think that would be so much fun to see. Or if you were going to do a man playing Juliet still as a woman, would it be fun to kind of like acknowledge that by perhaps making so the characters, like the actors, always trying to like raise the tone of their voice and, appear delicate and feminine, but sometimes, the male like kind of cracks through, like when I think of the scene when Juliet is talking to the nurse and is getting really upset, like, what did my love say? Like, is that a moment where it kind of like slips up? I don't know. But it's the same thing. Like, I don't think that there's any specific role. Like, maybe Mistress Overdone and Measure for Measure would be like a fun thing to play that role as like how's it going? Kind of like it's very clearly a man who's like dressed up as a woman, because like Measure for Measure is supposed to depict a very like debauched and depraved society. So like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but what if it's just like, well, yeah, times are tough, I'm dressing how I can, and I'm a lady, how you do it? what do you want to do with a play? I think one of the reasons Shakespeare's endured for as long as it has, and why it's the second most quoted text besides the Bible, is because it has so many interpretations. My last suggestion will be, what if, with the reversal of King Lear to Queen Lear, you also make it 3 sons instead of 3 daughters? So then it's suddenly sons fighting for inheritance instead of daughters trying to win more inheritance. And like, I think that could be an interesting, like, if you were going to make your Queen Lear, also make Regan, Goneril, and Cordelia like male.
Yeah.
I think
so just back on your Romeo and Juliet point, I think it would be interesting to see a man get wooed by a woman, because why not?
Yes, I am all for that. Please woo. Sorry, but I completely agree.
Yes.
On the same wavelength.
Lots of snaps. Taking us into question number 6. We've touched on this, the answer to this question throughout the conversation. So I'm just going to leave this up to an open forum to contribute any other examples you have. So our question is there a particular Shakespeare production where you've seen gender bending done well? So I know we've kind of already shared some of our thoughts. So Graham, if you want to pop on first, and then feel free, folks, to just jump in accordingly.
I'll try and get through this quickly because I do have 4.
Okay.
2011 Stratford production of Richard III, Sean McKenna playing Richard. The issue with this is that it was Sean McKenna playing a male Richard. I think it would be fun to see a female Richard or a trans Richard, which I will get to later. Or even an ace Richard. Like Richard is fun to play with. But I think that overall the production was good because it added that extra layer of Richard is not who he seems to be. So the audience knows that's Sean McKenna. And Sean McKenna knows I'm Sean McKenna playing Richard III. Or like Richard knows I am not male. But the other characters, they don't know. So it added a fun dynamic of like, and this gets into very intense theoretical discussions of suspension of disbelief and how far that goes. But I do think that one did it well. 2018's production of The Tempest, Martha Henry. I've spoken about this before, so I won't reiterate all here. I think that the transition for Prospero to Prospero was seamless. I may not have liked everything the production did. I think I preferred the Christopher Plummer production as a whole. Like, as a whole piece, I think I preferred that one better. But the gender bending was not the issue with that play. 2018 Globe Theatre's production of Hamlet reversed the gender of Hamlet, Horatio, Laertes, Ophelia, and Guildenstern. So all of them were the opposite, but think like it was really an interesting production as a whole. You can rent it for like £13 online if you have some extra money laying around and stream. Highly recommend. And lastly, Theatre Rustical's production of A Midsummer Night's Dream at Buddies and Bagtimes. I don't think I've laughed that hard in a live performance ever. It was so amazing.
McMacken.
Yep. Alison McMacken was like genius. Like, I was obsessed with that production. It was fantastic. You had like 2 men as Oberon and Titania. You had Helena and Demetrius were both swapped, and Nick Bottom was delightfully reversed as well. In general, just that entire production. And that one was the one where Aegeus, Theseus, Hippolyta, all the side roles were kind of shared by the company. And it was all like, and then he said, and then they'd say the line. And then someone else would come in and take it. It was just masterful. Like, that production was masterful.
Theatre Rustical is magical. They really are. I love Alison so much.
Lovely. Emma J, did you have some examples?
Yeah, I really liked Why Not Theater's Prince Hamlet. I tried so hard to get in the first week, or anyway, I
Christine
had to get
Horn
on a
played
wait.
Hamlet, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Right. I know. I
Oh
unfortunately
my
didn't get a
God.
chance to see it too, but I know her and her work, and she's fabulous as well.
Listen,
I'm friends with her.
Yay!
the way, okay, I recently did a workshop with her, and I didn't realize that she was going to be there, and I internally had to hold my fangirl and stay professional. But the way that I just wanted to spew, I love you, I love you, I love you, to her. Yeah, I love, 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 love that production and both iterations of it, because the first one happened at the theater center and the second one happened at Can Stage. And I really love Jeff Ho's Ophelia in that show as well. Just like brought so much truth and light to this character and what she was internally going through, and I loved it so much, and I can't say enough about it. And Horatio was perfection, and that's
Love that. Love it. Mackenzie, do you have any other examples?
Well, I mean, piggybacking off Graham, because I also saw the Shauna McKenna Richard.
Mm-hmm.
I also saw her do Caesar. And then I also saw the Martha Henry. Yeah, I saw that one. And and then I also saw the Martha Henry and Helen Mirren's Prospero film and stage show. So, I mean, overall, I've seen them done. I don't think they've been executed perfectly. I think, like, the Shauna McKenna ones, it always seems to be where she's playing a female but still playing the character as male. And I don't think that always hits the mark because they don't fully answer why was she cast other than because she's Shauna McKenna. And we wanted her to be this role. Like once again, I think if you're going to cast her as Richard, what are you trying to say about Richard, and what are you doing other than, like, it's Shauna McKenna? Martha Henry and Anthony Chinua, I think they were trying to say something with her being Prospero. I don't think they fully hit the mark, though. I think it got a little muddled, because I think, Graham, your point of when you make Prospero female, you do get in that inner political game that, like, these men pushed her out. Is, I think, the direction they were trying to go with her version, but I don't think they fully hit the mark. So
I just think that production was a little tame. That's all.
Oh, absolutely. Like I love Martha Henry better. Her Prospero lacked a little bit of fire, in my personal opinion. I didn't feel that. I think Helen Mirren had a little bit more of that anger drive that Prospero needs at certain points. I didn't find that quite hit the mark there overall. But that's another. Go watch our review of Martha Henry's Tempest to get our full review
Totally
thoughts on that production. But yeah, I've seen it done. I don't think it's fully hit the market. I wish I'd seen some of these other productions you're talking about, because they all sound superb. But the ones I have seen, I've seen them done. I don't think they fully hit the mark yet. But I'm never opposed to them doing it. I think I love to see Shauna McKenna do Lear again. I would love to see her take on Prospero one day. I think.
Did you see that production of Lear?
No, I didn't. I missed it. I was living up in Barrie at the time and commuting to work.
Oh, okay, because that would have satisfied your. That would have satified your need to see her playing female, because she played a female.
Perfect.
She didn't. They didn't play it male. I had no problems with her playing as a female, because, like I said earlier, it doesn't really matter, because they were focusing more on just her loss of power, and it was just interesting. But I have to admit, I love the production. I don't know overall as a whole it was done well, but Shauna McKenna, and she played it extreme. Like, she was amazing. Because she's just amazing. But I have to admit, I didn't love that production. I think I have more problems with the direction than anything else.
I liked it when I was watching it, but to be honest, not that the production itself was forgettable, but I literally did forget about the production.
It was too long.
You said it.
It was just too long.
Yeah.
I was there. I didn't expect it to be so long. And then they did a Q&A afterwards, and you can just see me groaning and moaning. And I'm like, I'm not staying for this. My friends are like, are you going to stay for the Q&A? And I'm like, and I knew two of the actors in the production, and I wanted to talk with them. And I'm like, hells no, I'm leaving. It's too long. It's so late. I'm tired as hell. So that's another criticism too, because like, I don't mind when they decide to do the full version, but it went longer than it needed to be. And they could have cut a lot.
That's fair.
Yeah.
There we go.
You were piggybacking, Susan. Were there any other like specific gender bending you've seen well with other productions other than the Shauna McKenna?
I'm not sure if I've done well. I think I'm similar to Graham, because I think I've seen productions where I've seen gender bending, but they play a male character. I've seen Macduff be played as a female playing it as a male. And that always confused me as well. Like, it was a long time ago. It was at Young People Theatre when I was in high school, or even before high school, maybe. And
Lorraine Kinza,
the actress that played. This was before it was called Lorraine Kinza. It was originally Young People's Theatre, and then it changed. Yeah. Now I'm kind of exposing my age. But, no, this was Young People's Theatre when the original. And I forgot the actress's name who played Macduff. And I have to admit, when I saw it, I thought she was brilliant, but she played as a male, and they did do a Q&A afterwards, and I was the precocious teen putting out my hand going, why? Like, why are you playing it as a male? And they kind of tripped up the actors. I think that was my first time pissing off actors. So, yeah, it was interesting.
Hey, that's a very valid question for you to ask the actors.
People, but it was interesting.
Yeah.
It's also so much fun to trip up actors. I mean, it's also like, it's a dick move to pull. It's like, hey, I'm going to ask you a question you didn't consider. And, when you've read enough theater theory, it gets easier and easier. I did that at a show of buddies and I feel a little bad. Sorry.
Yeah, I just didn't understand why. But I never blame the actors. I blame the director, because I'm like, why did that actress have to play Macduff as a male? She would have been extremely strong as a female, as a military person. I didn't understand, and the fact that she stood out because she was the only one that gender swapped, so that even stuck out even more in the production. Right. And for me, that's always a question to the director, not the actor themselves, because they're just doing a job. We'll get into a whole new can of worms with that, where I never blame the actor. I mainly blame the director. So,
okay.
I find that a lot of actors can only do so much.
The buck stops somewhere.
Valid, for sure.
I just had one last thought.
Yeah.
I always question it, but always enjoy whenever I see, I think the character's name is Dogberry from Much Ado, being played as a woman. I always question it, because I don't think I've ever seen Dogberry played as a man in my life. So it was just a thought. It wasn't fully formed, but I just needed to say it.
Yeah.
Flipping to Much Ado.
Everyone's going into
I've never seen it performed live as a male, but I've seen a couple film adaptations where Michael Keaton played it and one where Nathan Fillion played it.
If I remember correctly,
that's right, Emma Thompson
with Bruce Dow playing the role.
Oh, I love Bruce. That would make sense. Great. I like that.
I believe that like early 2000s production, he did play it with a Basset Hound dog
when I was
on stage.
Not even double digits yet. Or maybe double digits.
Oh, Much Ado. Here we go.
Right.
My uncle was his roommate in college in drama school.
Love
that's so fun.
Yes, so lovely.
Shout out to you, Bruce, if you're watching.
This answer has brought us into our works, which is a lovely segue to question number 7, because again, these next couple questions we have touched upon, but we will just scope further into them. So, number 7, often changing a character's gender also means altering a character's sexual orientation accordingly. In the canon, which character pairings, whether it be romantic or social, most benefit from these changes? So we're getting to some specific examples again. And Mac, your hand shot up, so you could.
This was one. The minute I read this question, I was like, I know which one I want to see this happen to, and it's Duke Orsino from Twelfth Night. I think that is such a wonderful can of worms you open when you change that, because now that gives a whole new dimension to the Duke Olivia relationship. where like now you're playing this whole new game of like, well, you're giving more reason for why maybe Olivia doesn't want to be with the Duke, because she just isn't attracted to the Duke if like that way, which is a valid possibility for that thing. But then you also give Viola more games to, like, more thoughts to give for her when she is becoming attracted to the Duke. And so I think that opens a wonderful can of worms when you swap the Duke. I think it has this wonderful ripple effect for multiple characters, not just one relationship. Like I think you did an R and J swap, where like yes, it does affect Mercutio and a few others, but like I think this one with Duke Orsino opens up such a great can of worms that as a director, my brain is just it's been spinning like since the day like a few days ago when I wrote out this answer. I was like, yes, okay, now I know how I want to do Twelfth Night. I know how I want to tackle Duke Orsino or Duchess Orsino as it would be, because I think that's a wonderful and that character is so poetic too, with that opening line of "If music be the fruit of love, play on." Like it's such a wonderful poetic character that I think it just lends itself to having some fun with that.
Hammer Jade, yeah, go.
When we change the gender of whoever the character is, why do we have to change their name?
Yep.
I mean, you could.
Because you I guess corrected yourself and said Duchess Orsino, but why couldn't it be Duke Orsino? That was just like my thought that came up immediately when you were talking.
For me, it was just a correction because I know we did it with like when you changed Prospero to Prospera, which is what I've seen. So for me, I just did the correction.
That doesn't matter either.
It doesn't matter. Like for me, like I just went, oh, like, if you're swapping the gender, then I think for me, I just went, then you swap the first pronoun that goes with it, because I think once again that's just keeping it a very straight line for the audience too. Because if you're playing it as a female but still calling them a Duke, I think that gets a little bit muddled with the audience. For me, like I don't know.
Unless they're playing a Duke.
Yeah.
Unless they're playing a Duke. Okay.
Like for me, like if I were to change Duke Orsino, I would make that character a Duchess, and make that very particularly a female character. Just like if you change, like Martha Henry changed Prospero to Prospera, and made her from the Duke of Milan to the Duchess of Milan instead.
Okay. Yeah. I think this is like not related to this question at all. I just maybe this is just my personal politic about it, but I don't think that pronouns need to be changed in plays for people to understand and follow along in the story, or names at all, or titles. I think all of those can still apply to whoever's playing them on wherever. I guess since I'm talking now, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. And also just to before you go off on your turn on Emergy too, just to reiterate, the question is saying just altering a character's sexual orientation. So it's taking away the gender bending sort of quality and just talking about orientation. So I think Jade, you were segueing to that anyways too. So
yeah. I don't think like nothing benefits or doesn't benefit from these pairings. I don't think. I think whoever you have them play, whoever is playing these roles, and whatever sexual orientation is written, I think that is valid and can be played that way. And then the dynamic will always shift depending on who's playing these roles. I think. I think that is what I'm going to leave on.
Universally, pairings will work accordingly, regardless of sexual orientation at hand.
Yeah.
Susan, you want to piggyback off that?
Yeah, I think it depends on the play. And I think we've all reiterated that earlier about gender, but that also goes for sexual orientation. Like, because it was written really from a male perspective, just to think about Hamlet, like I love Hamlet, I think it would be interesting to have Ophelia as a male lover character, because it's so written like a stereotypical female role. And to have Gertrude as another uncle or something, Queen Gertrude. I think it just would be interesting to see Hamlet's, like, would that change Hamlet's relationship with Ophelia? Because I have seen other side characters from that production play different genders, and it didn't really matter. But to actually change orientation, that could be interesting too. Like, I know there's a big controversy with Taming the Shrew and doing it now, and I think we've touched upon it in other talks, where play that's something that you can do now, knowing how the Me Too movement has arrived, and just, there is scenes in that play where, Catherine's getting abused, and or like they're taming her. But would it be interesting if Petruchio was a lesbian and they had a lesbian, like, would those elements still be the same, because it's still the characters, in order to be nice to each other, they have to be nasty. So I think it could be really interesting, and we touched upon it too. Like, either Romeo is a lesbian, or Juliet is a male lover. That could be interesting as well. So, yeah.
Just as a fun fact, before we segue to Graham, I'll just share my one and only sharing into the actual conversation, stepping away from mediating really quickly. In third year, my classical project at school, we did a contemporary-esque Hamlet, where it was kind of just this overarching emo sort of like darker interpretation of the story. But we had double casting, and it also wasn't just like cast A, cast B. There was like interchangeable per performance. So our Hamlet, we had a male Hamlet and we had a female Hamlet, and we had decided as a team, and we had, both of our Ophelias as examples were also women. But when Amanda, our female Hamlet, was on stage, this Hamlet was defined as lesbian, and the Ophelia on that night was also a lesbian. Whereas when Jake, our male Hamlet, was on stage, that Hamlet was straight, and our Ophelia in that moment was straight too. So our Ophelias sort of had the playing around of their gender or their sexual orientation switched depending on who their scene partner was. In that discussion, I just remember in table work, that was like a really interesting layering to have within the performance too. And it actually allowed a lot of relationship experimenting to happen throughout the whole process, especially because like every component of the play sort of changed. Like none of the casts were ever like exactly the same cast to be played every night. So these sort of relationship discussions rippled throughout every other character on stage too. Not in a grand way, but it was very interesting table work to be done in today's song. Yeah.
Can I just jump in before Graham starts?
Yeah.
I would be interested, but I'm also like maybe a little upset. I don't know. How am I feeling? Anyway, I'd be interested in like bisexuality and pansexuality and asexuality being depicted in these plays, because all of these are like human, and I think we definitely like stay within the cis bubble, and we stay in the hetero bubble, and we stay in the gay bubble and the lesbian bubble, but like there are so many other identities and orientations out there. And I think that just like even the way that we speak about these plays, I think our scope needs to go out a little bit more in regards to these conversations, personally speaking.
Yeah, for sure. And Graham,
I think I'll quickly piggyback off of that.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see how other characters' reactions to the couple being same sex versus opposite sex would play, because there's always those biases that are just unfortunately part of life, and there's discrimination that shows up. And how would it play out if, okay, tonight it is lesbian Hamlet and Ophelia, but how does Claudius and Gertrude react to them? How does just the regular servants react to them? Do they do their job because, oh, that's Prince Hamlet, but not out of any kind of duty? They kind of like drag their feet about it. Do they roll their eyes? Do they, like, what kind of like infrastructure around that would be or could be depicted? I don't know. I'm certainly thinking about that. But I will answer the question, and I will avoid other plays that I have mentioned. Midsummer, of course. I'm like, not go there again. We will, don't worry. But I'll mention specific characters. I think that with regards to sexual orientation, Emilia and Iago, if you play with their sexual orientation, there are so many different combinations that could have so many different like exploding effects into the world of the play that like I personally would love to direct a gay Iago, like where Iago was in love with Othello, and so it's kind of like not only is like I didn't get the promotion, but also I didn't get my man, and suddenly I thought about it.
Jada's now left us.
And I'm like,
she's melting.
Kaboom! Like what if it's that? What if it's a female Iago who's a woman scoring? Like what if? This is why Othello is one of my favorite plays right now, because like I really want to see this done.
I would love to see that.
Remember, Jude, your wheels are turning. I can literally hear the wheels going.
I'm not calm right now. I'm not calm.
Okay. Just breathe. Anyways, seeing other characters, I think of Portia not from necessarily the court scene, which everyone thinks about Portia with the quality of mercy, but I think more about the prescription in her father's will, where that because Portia is female, her father has the right at the time period to say, you have to go through these trials before you can marry anyone, and this just, the will of the father, and you just have to do it, so sucks to be you. But what if Portia were playing male, and suddenly it's like, okay, maybe the father thought, my son is a dimwit, and, I don't trust him to choose a suitable partner, so I'm going to put this challenge in place, and if he doesn't cooperate, he don't get any of that cheddar cheese. Like, what if Julius Caesar, I'll use that as the general example of just authority figures. This is more of the social aspect, not so much the sexual orientation aspect of the question. Again, comment on how do people react to women in positions of power? Because oftentimes it's not pretty. Like, ask anyone, I'll do a contemporary example, Devil Wears Prada. Miranda Priestley is a very divisive character. She is either an absolute boss, I love her, or oh my god, she's such a bee. Like, she's like not a good thing. Like, I've seen both reactions. And last play, I'll mention Merry Wives of Windsor. It's already so fun and frivolous, let's just double the wives. What if, and also have a female Falstaff? Why not? Because what if you explore the way lesbians deal with cuckoldry? Or like, the idea of open relationships, or like, what about? Clearly I am the queer theory person on like every group discussion. So, hell yeah.
I love it, Graham. I love it.
Everyone's smiling. Love it. Okay. So segueing us to sort of, same format-esque of the last question. We're just switching from sexual orientation to familial relations. So again, we've touched on this a lot in our conversation in regards to King Lear, in regards to A Winter's Tale. So we'll just scope in again. So feel free, whoever has more examples or wants to expand. Graham's like, pick me. So similarly, changing a character's gender also means altering a character's familial relation or character's familial relations. So in the canon, which characters or plays would most benefit from this change? So we can expand on King Lear in A Winter's Tale, or we can, any other examples? Graham, if you want to kind of lead us down this.
I will, with pleasure. I've already talked about Prospero. The whole mother-daughter dynamic, I think, is something fun to play with. There's an extra layers that can be added when it's a mother-daughter versus a father-daughter. There's still, with the father-daughter, there's that expectation of respect, depending on the time period, depending on the whole framework of the play. That, of course, everything I say is depending on what circumstances the play is being produced from. And King Lear, same thing. If it were mother and son, that would cause some tension with inheritance. And even mother-daughter, that could potentially be a very different relationship, because then you have to explore, okay, why is there no partner to Queen Lear? Or where is the husband or wife, depending on how you want to set that up. because sometimes the mother can be portrayed as like the bad cop of the parents. Like, well, I don't like what mom said, so I'm gonna go to dad. Like that seems so like that is such a, it's a stereotype for a reason. Like the dad being the guy who works all day and comes back and suddenly is like, well, I just want kids to like me, so I'm gonna just give them what they want. But I'll raise a new play or a new character specifically with regards to family relations, say Jessica from Merchant of Venice, who isn't a terribly large role, but Jessica revolts against Shylock because it's like, well, I hate my father, is so commanding, and like he's enforcing this religion on me, and he's like, he doesn't let me marry who I want, and I'm in love with this other guy, and there's a lot of anti-Semitism in the play, and like there's just it's not a good time. It's really not a good time. I don't know why it's called a comedy. It is not. It's really not. But what if you had Shylock and Jessica be a mother-daughter? So like make Shylock female. Because first of all, that adds not only are you hated because you're a moneylender and that's against the law, but also you're Jewish, and that's not a good thing in this play. And now you're a woman as well. A single woman, which adds another layer to it. So having a female Shylock playing a mother, there's also reasons that mothers and daughters butt heads that men can't necessarily comprehend because they are coming from a male perspective. And I can say personally, I am ignorant of this, to a larger extent, like conversations that my sister and my mom had that I'm just not privy to. There are things I don't even know that I don't know. So I think that that's a fun role you can play with. Like, so I said Jessica's changed, but it's more Shylock changing. And that is where I'll leave it.
That's would also be interesting to see like a mother-son dynamic in that as well.
Yeah, the whole disrespect. They're like, I'm a young man. I can do what I want. Mom's like, please. Please. Please.
Seriously.
Brought you into this world, I can take you out.
Emma J, do you have any other examples for us to change?
Like a lot of my answers so far, I think all of these relationships could be explored familially. Like they're all of whatever is chosen would be interesting for me to watch, because it's just interesting to watch families operate on stage.
Great,
in this format.
Yeah, very valid. For sure. Susan?
To be honest, I don't really have anything to add. I think I've already said a lot, and I think it's just a repetition of what everyone has said already. So.
Yeah, so this answer too, we've talked a lot about the different productions. Mac, are you in the same vein? Do you have any other
I actually have two that
your brain?
I had two that came out in my thing. So first up, I would love to see a female Titus, because I think that would be, I mean, once again, as Graham said, the what ifs just steamrolled through my brain the minute I clicked on that. Because, like, first off, you have the great thing of women in the military, so you're getting that whole aside.
Isn't there one coming out?
I
think there's one that's supposed to be in production right now.
A female Titus?
Love that.
Yeah, where it's an all-female Titus.
Okay,
it's all-female Titus.
That is interesting.
I think there's it's just supposed to be a film coming out. Yeah.
Okay, I'm excited for that.
If not, let's make that happen.
Yeah. I mean, like, for me, like, I love the idea of a female Titus, because once again, now it's mother-daughter, and especially after what happens to Lavinia, spoiler alert, the awful assault and mutilation that goes on in that play to poor Lavinia. But I think having that as a mother-daughter revenge tale of these two women going after Caius and I forget the other twin's name, but this wonderful thing of this mother-daughter working together to try and get vengeance against this other mother, who is Tamara. I think you now get a really kind of cool dynamic there. And I think if you really wanted to go full on and have a really interesting thing, you can make Lavinia a male. And have that be a really interesting game now where it's mother-son. And like what happens to Lavinia when you make that a male character. Now you get into a whole new realm of things that we don't really talk about, which is male assault and what happens with that, and the ripple effects that happen with that, and just what happens with that type of thing that happens. So I think if you made Lavinia a male, I think you could really do some interesting work with that actor playing that part, especially with the way the actor reacts to what has happened to them and just what happens to them later on in the play. So yeah, I think you could have some fun there with that. I also think Master Page in Merry Wives, piggybacking off Graham a little bit, I think Master Page is a really interesting one because Master Page's story is all about finding the partner for the daughter Anne. I think you really have some really interesting dynamics there with mother, and then mother trying to find a partner for the daughter. Like, is the mother going for a hetero relationship with her daughter, or is she open to having all the suitors be female? And like, you can really play games with that. Once again, like, I think having that particular role, and just the way that interacts with Mistress Page as well, because Master Page is the one that's kind of like, my wife is fine, she'd never cheat on me, like, blow off Master Ford and his suspicions. Like, I think Master Page is a really underrated role in that play that you could really have some fun bringing him up a little bit in recognition of that play. So yeah, Master Page and either Titus or Lavinia from Titus Andronicus were my three kind of ones that I really want to experiment with.
Yeah. Amazing examples, productions and character-wise, folks. Like, definitely food for thought, and wheels are turning. So, okay, so taking us to question number 9. Again, we've trickled sort of into this already, so we'll just kind of hone in and see what other comments we have. In some cases, female-identifying performers play male roles without altering the original gender of the character. And what implication does this have on the performance itself? So I know we've already used like Shauna McKinnon as Richard III as a case study for this, but there's any other talking points on this you want to bring to the table? Susan, I'll start with you because we were talking a lot about the Richard III combo.
Yeah, I think I kind of already answered this as well. Yeah. Just the Macduff character in the Macbeth play. Right. Just once again, I don't like this. I just play your gender, because then it would add another layer to the role, regardless if it was written for a male, female, trans, bi, gender fluid, neutral, pan person. Just play it as that, and then add that layer to whatever role you tackle onto. So, once again, I'm not a fan of, but Graham gave some examples that it could work, but I personally just don't like it when I see it, because then I'm just like, what's the point? If they're going to play that gender, regardless of what gender they are, then why didn't they just hire that gender?
Yeah.
Like, what was the point of hire? Even if the act could be really, really good, I'm just like, Sorry, I feel like I'm giving up now. But this is how I feel. I just let them play.
Yeah. Graham, do you have more to add? You did touch on this earlier too, so.
I do. When it comes to, like, I think I agree with Susan, mainly because it's like you're making a casting choice and then you're not addressing it. You're pretending as if it doesn't matter, and that's just cutting off your nose to spite your face, because when it comes to switching, and this can apply to gender, sexual orientation, race, or cultural background of a character, there are going to be ripples into the world of the play and into the world at large if you make these changes to a character. And I think not addressing them or pretending as if it doesn't matter kind of just, you're cutting the conversation short. You're dropping the mic before it really should be. And there's some fun things you can do with it. Like, I'm picturing, if you have, let's say, Falstaff, big comedic character played by a woman but playing a man. What would it be like as the audience to see a woman being boorish and unladylike and drinking and farting and putting her feet up on the table? And like, would that be a way to kind of introduce, specifically, I'd say, men to the idea that, guess what? Women are people too. Like, newsflash, this is the thing. Or what if you have Caliban, who can represent generations of women who have been used as domestic help and considered property of men? And like, what can that say? Not addressing it is a bigger problem. Doing it and saying like, oh, the audience can talk about it. I don't assume the audience will have those conversations. Like, if you want to say something, say something. Likewise, Richard III and Iago, I've mentioned before. What is it seeing? There's all these stereotypes of women being, subversive and sly and manipulative, and these go back decades, if not centuries. Does casting these roles as women playing men kind of subconsciously blend misogyny, realism, and stereotype into this unholy trinity of suddenly depicting women as, all women are manipulative, all women are sly and are going to try and claw their way up and take you for everything you have and ruin your life? Like, is there a can of worms to be opened by doing that? I think that you can do it, but you're better to address it rather than do it and just say, well, because it's 2020 and no one should care about this, but guess what? People still care about these things.
Yeah. MJ, do you want to, if you want to piggyback off that, or if everything's been said?
I mean, I in most ways agree with what has been said. But like back to the language of Shakespeare, I don't think we need to change any of that language at all. And I think that it is up to a skilled director to be able to pull all of these qualities and relationships out in the text and in the performance without like altering the person coming to the table to do this work. Because like, again, you can have like a female Hamlet and not change any of the language, and she is still very much going to be a female Hamlet. And if the director is skilled enough, you'll be able to see that and get past like the pronoun usage and get past all of the other things that we are like conditioned socially to think about. And then you'll be able to just focus on the story being told by whoever is on the stage. And I so in that regard, it's not ever up to the actor, in my opinion. It's always up to the director to bring these thoughts to the table and be able to manipulate them to what their vision, what they want their vision to be.
And then Mac, do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I mean, just piggybacking off what everybody said, I think if you're going to do it, like, by all means, if you want to have Shauna McKenna play Richard III as a male, go for it, but just do your dramaturgical due diligence and don't leave it to the audience to answer your question for you. Because that's what I've seen so many times where, like after seeing Julius Caesar, why did they make Shauna Caesar? Like, what are they trying to say? And it wasn't clear. But it's like, why did you do it? Because audiences will ask the question. I mean, as a director, it is your job to scope and hone the vision of the piece. And if you're going to make that choice, back the choice and make a decision. Don't be wishy-washy on it, because that's just bad direction. And that distracts the audience from the story. And when you're doing Shakespeare, where audiences are already, I don't want to say struggling, but they are already having a hurdle of language if they're not a well-versed person in the language, and they're trying to catch the story, and now they're also going, wait, is Martha Henry a female or male Prospero? Luckily, Martha Henry, she was very clear she was a female Prospero. But like, sometimes you get stuck asking yourself these questions, and it's detracting from the play in not a good way. You don't like audiences should go leave away having a conversation, but it shouldn't be, what were you trying to say? As a director, you should be able to very articulately go, this is what I was trying to say. It's up to like how interpretation of like, do you agree with what I was trying to say? But the audience should never be left going, what the heck did I just watch? And what was trying to be said? Because that is just bad direction. And once again, that is gimmick casting that I said right off the top. Don't do gimmick casting. If you're going to cast Shauna McKinnon as Richard III, make that choice, back that choice, and be clear with your choice. Don't just go, it's Shauna McKenna. Like, I'll sell the show. Because that's just bad. Bad.
Star power.
That's a whole nother panel we could open up.
I can see somebody doing that with like Meryl Streep, where it's like Meryl Streep as Prospero, but not doing anything else other than being Meryl Streep as Prospero. It's like, well, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to do here besides making me go see Meryl Streep?
Yep, it's Meryl Streep playing Prospero. That's what we're trying to say. That's all.
There it is.
Buy a ticket. It's $150 a seat.
Yeah.
I think for them, it's like, we got Meryl Streep. We don't care.
Exactly. It's a selfish way of putting
Which,
it
once
forward.
again, selfish, and it poisons that well of down the road when somebody else, like a Helen or somebody who does want to play that role and has something to say, now you're fighting against the tide. And we talked a little bit about this when we did our Christopher Plummer review of The Tempest with Martha Henry. We did that compare and contrast. And Joe brought up some very good points on that. So watch that video, plugging that once again, because we talked about just how that didn't quite land with Martha Henry, and now what that ramification is going forward if a Shauna McKenna picks up and plays Prospero again in, say, a decade when she's ready to play it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, once again, like, every decision you make does have a ramification somewhere else. It's not an insulated bubble, because people see that production and they make a judgment choice and going, well, if it didn't work then, do I really want to go pay and see another theater company do it again to me? Because, like, it's a thing. Audiences are very selective about where they spend their money, and if you're gonna do a choice, make the choice and articulate the choice. Don't just do it for the sake of a gimmick.
Well said and well thought and spoken across the panel. Segueing us to question number 10, which lovingly the examples that's embedded in this question have already been brought up in our conversation. So once again, just shedding a little bit more specific light on this question. So for roles that already feature characters cross-dressing in the canon, example, Viola, Rosalind, and As You Like It, which we've already chatted about, and Portia in The Merchant of Venice, which was just recently brought up. How can, as contemporary theater makers, how can we portray these characters in conversation with present day gender politics? And I'm going to start this one with Graham.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you have for us on this one?
So I'll open by saying I don't often consider this perspective a lot. A lot of my theater work comes from a queer perspective. You know, that's just what I tend to focus on, and imagining how can Shakespeare be used to tell queer narratives, because there really aren't any directly said in Shakespeare. But in thinking about this question, I did think of, for specifically these plays, and I'm not too versed with As You Like It, but Merchant and Twelfth Night, certainly, I think it comes down to the frame that you set up around the piece. And that if you set up a framework of taking, like, everyone knows what gender stereotypes and gender norms and this, like, hierarchical structure of society, specifically of the time period, everyone is kind of familiar with it, even if they don't directly acknowledge it. But if you take that and just ramp it up to like 100 and make it a really, really clear divide, you can suddenly make these characters jumping from one to the other a very, very impactful, even more poignant moment, because it's more than just giving a woman a voice because she's wearing pants. It's a woman being accepted as a man, especially in the case of Viola and Portia. Like, not only they made the switch, but they are passing in this new gender. And suddenly they're seeing the world through this gender's perspective. Like, I can think of, I've read stories of trans individuals who suddenly being privy to the conversations of men or women, respectively, they're like, wow, I never even considered, like, the kind of misogynistic things that men say about female coworkers behind closed doors. Like, why are we talking this way? Why is suddenly, like, decorum out the window? So I think that if you were to ramp up the stereotypes in the worlds, and this might even come down to putting scenes that are not in the script in, and I'm not saying with words, it could just be like a small moment. For instance, I'll use Twelfth Night. If after Cesario leaves Olivia's estate and Malvolio's running after to give the ring, what if you see a man harassing a woman and Cesario steps in and, like, defends the woman? And it's kind of like a shocking moment, because, oh my God, why would anyone do that? Like, again, just if you exaggerate it, I think you have the potential to make, like, much bolder statements. But again, I don't normally think this way, so I'll just leave it at that.
Emma Jade, I'll turn to you next.
I think to even have the conversation in the context of a theater piece on stage, we have to bring our honesty, I think. And we have to like bring our real world selves into the room, and remember like that this content was written in a time that's very different from ours, and we have to just like not like occasionally keep our dynamics in mind and our real world, but like always keeping our real world in mind when we're working on this work. And so like, yeah, just the way that like we all operate in society is it's present in how we carry ourselves. And I think we just always need to come to the table ready to work with our self and what we do in the world in mind. I think that's how I want to answer that.
Yeah, very well said. Mackenzie, what's your thoughts on this question?
Well, for me, I just went, how do I put this? I think the biggest thing to do with these type of characters is you honor their journey. You honor their story. And that comes from just making sure that when these moments happen where Viola puts on the pants for self-preservation, because that's what she says she's going to do, you make sure that the play honors that, and we don't just kind of brush it off. So that also comes from a directing point where, like, if you're going to do a production, a very modern day production of Merchant of Venice, what does that ramification have for Portia's big moment in the courtroom? Where now, if you do set it in 2020, why does Portia have to be dressed up as a male to come into that courtroom and be the lawyer? She can be the lawyer as a female and have that power moment. Mm-hmm. Like, so I think for me as a director, my biggest thing is making sure you honor the text and you honor the story and you honor these powerful female characters that Shakespeare has given us. Because Shakespeare has given us some really powerful females who make these choices to be men in a very poignant moment. Whether that's Rosalind going into the forest going, I'm in a male's world where I could be attacked at any minute on the road. So the best thing for me to do is put on a pair of pants. And like, same thing with...
But would that interfere with the text?
What do you mean? Like,
I mean by the intention of the text, because then it takes away the whole idea of the cross-dressing aspect of it. Because then the whole point of the cross-dressing is to shift the power onto, like I said earlier, there's a lot of females transitioning into males. And so it's that shift of power. But if you already come in and take that cross-dressing away and letting like her come in as the lawyer, as a female, does that interfere with the intention of the text?
Sorry, so I think we're hitting the same point here. I think, I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like my thing is, like I'm saying, we like if you're going to do a modern day production, you have to think about what that moment has if you change that moment. So I think being fair to Portia, you don't want to detract from that power moment of her coming into the courtroom as the man wearing the pants and being the lawyer. Like I think if you're in a situation where audiences go, well, why can't you just be a female being a powerful lawyer? I don't know if I'm hitting the answer at all.
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little bit confused by the question because we're already talking about gender switching and all that, and now we're talking about the actual plays that have the cross-dressing within the canon, and so that's why there's that complexity. Like I think I agree with Emma Jade where you have to be as honest, or the actors or characters have to be as honest as possible. But if we are gonna go that route, then like you were saying earlier in that scene, well, do you know what I mean? Does it change the aspects of the text that way? Going to portray them as honest as possible. Like I'm just throwing it out there. And I'm also stirring the pot, but
it's also.
But I'm just curious to know what
Portia like becomes Balthazar too, right? So her whole character name changes in that moment. So that's another layer to
Like my biggest.
So I just wanted to know, in your perspective. Sorry. I just wanted to know from your perspective, like, would that take away from the intention of the text or intention of the scene?
I mean, for me, like, I just go like as Emma Jade said, these plays are written in a very particular time, and so because of that, you have to work you can only fiddle so much before you start detracting from some of these powerful moments, like Portia coming into the courtroom, like these moments that are meant to be powerful female moments where they put the pants on, they're showing the men up, being the smartest person in the room. If you start fiddling too much with the setting or the period, you can kind of start detracting from that powerful moment. And I think as a director, you just have to be really mindful of that with these characters, because I mean, nowadays we're seeing people try all types of different combinations, and I'm all for trying things. I just think we have to be mindful once again of the text and honoring these characters in their journey within the play, because you don't want everyone to detract too much from that
Graham?
powerful moment.
At the same time, I'll pose that what if Portia, if we were to set Merchant in a more modern or contemporary time period, where you do have many female lawyers and judges, what if Portia, if still depicted as a woman, in a kind of skewed or sheltered mindset, thinks that in order for me to be taken seriously, I have to be a man. And maybe part of Portia's journey is discovering that I don't have to be a man to be taken seriously. What if that could be something that you could take it, like maybe she comes from the perspective of like Shakespeare's day where I need to put on the pants, but then learns, well, actually, no, I don't.
Right.
Yeah, I think you definitely could go that route too. My biggest thing is just, once again, we be honest about the text, and we honor we honor the character and their journey. That was my biggest answer to that question. In a really long, convoluted way of answering. I apologize.
And Susan, you piggybacked off of Mac anyways.
Yeah.
If there's anything to...
I'm just thinking on hindsight. I think we were talking about the same thing.
Right. But it is so...
I agree with everyone here. I don't think I have anything more to add, really. I think Graham offered a really interesting interpretation of Portia and her arc as a character. I honestly just think, but I'm also picking back off of Emery Jade, like, just stay honest. I think that could be interesting. I think it all has to be how it's framed. Like, each play, depending on the play, as a director, how you want to tackle the themes, and is that an important enough to do with the modern day sensibility. So I think it all depends on how you frame the play and which play you do. But yeah, I would love to see that version, Graham. You need to direct it.
What that phrase and statement you just said, Susan, it sounds to me a lot like the thesis statement of this whole panel thus far, of where it's really dependent on the dramaturgy and the director's ownership of their interpretation of these plays, and then throwing it on a modern stage, whether whatever, not necessarily a modern setting, but on a modern stage, and really having that tightness is what is needed today. So that was very well said. Thank you for that. Graham, did you have something to add to that?
Yes. Something specific you said, like it depends on the play that you decide to put on. I think that is really important, because there's a canon, it's all public domain. A lot of people like to fall back on Shakespeare because, it will sell seats. Everyone knows Hamlet. Everyone knows King Lear. Like, these are names. Like, Shakespeare has star power in that it will draw people in. And so a lot of theater companies do it. But I'm going to take the profanity out of this quote, and I'll just say, like, don't mess with the text, let the text mess with you. You're going to read a play and you really say, I want to do this interpretation. Does that interpretation work with the text? Or is there a better text to frame your vision in?
Bingo. So
it's really about honestly reading the text. Does the text support this? Because I do not want to see you say, suddenly I'm out of examples. Like, I really want to tell a story about, let's fall back on my always, queer men and falling in love. And I really want to do it in Cymbeline. Okay, cool. Does Cymbeline work? I don't know. I'm not well versed in Cymbeline. A lot happens in that play. Or, let's do Titus Andronicus as a love story. Cool. I'd love to see a dramaturge that one, but I have no idea.
Graham, It looks like we might have time, but I'll tell you after the Midsummer's production I saw in this context.
Please do. Please do.
I can't just stop talking. It's the best Midsummers I've seen, and I don't like Midsummers. So
great.
And I unironically like it, so here we go. It works. Also, like I'll plug. Just have me. We like my interpretations of Merchant and Othello. Let's just have me direct some pieces. Come on, Cup of Hemlock.
Do it, Graham.
Let's do it. I said, there's so many tangential conversations to be had.
Hire me.
Yes. Me as well. This whole panel, like so
we'll all
great.
come on board with you.
Collective creation.
Yay!
Community and conversation during COVID, y'all. That's what we're all about, and that's what we are doing today. And it is so lovely. And bittersweetly, that's taking us right into our last question, folks. We are ending this panel with question number 11. How can we, as contemporary theater makers, equally represent and cast LGBTQIA+ folks with particular focus on artists identifying as transgender, non-binary, intersex, or otherwise gender non-conforming? So we'll start with Emma Jade. You want to kick us off with this one?
Truly, I think this is up to directors. This isn't up to actors at all, because all types of actors exist, and all types of actors should be allowed to come into the room when it comes to Shakespeare, because it's Shakespeare who really cares. And I think that if a director is doing their due diligence of trying to tell the story, they should choose a variety of people to tell the story, so that it properly kind of represents the outside world, because this is the world we're living in, where all types of people exist and all types of people should be seen on stages.
Lovely.
So I think that's really, really, truly up to directors, and we really need diverse directors out there as well. We can't be putting these into the hands of old white men. I'll say it. Sure. Yes. Old white men really kind of ruin things for me. So I think if we, like, for example, not in regards to sexuality, but in regards to race, Tanisha Tate, taking on Othello at the University of Windsor. I went to opening night, so I personally brought my butt from Toronto and went all the way to Windsor to go watch the show, because I thought it was so incredible that a Black woman was able to tell the story of this Black man and through her lens. And it was just like, it really was so moving. And even if I didn't know that Tanisha was the director, I think that Othello experience would have hit me differently because it was from her perspective. So I think diversity in acting is definitely a given, because but we really need diversity in our directors and theater makers and people who pull the strings as well.
Yeah, perfectly said. In pulling the strings, we'll go to our puppet theater component specialist, Susan. I'll let you take the torch next.
Yeah, I speak on behalf of puppets. I agree with Emma Jade. I just, I'm tired of BIPOC. Sorry, now we're going to race, but I'm just tired of BIPOC's actors always being the servant or the second peasant, or, and I just don't understand why they can't be the main character or the queen or king.
Like, are we not lovable? Are we not attractive? Are we not humans? Do we not have?
I think I said this earlier. I think it's seen as other. It says others, and I think this kind of goes with this question as well, with the so many of the acronyms LGBTQIA+2S folks. I think it's the same. I don't, as a director, I would be very conscious of trying to portray them as others in a Shakespeare or any show, to be honest. So because it's Shakespeare, and like we've said throughout this whole panel, it doesn't matter. Like for me, it wouldn't matter me hiring a transgendered or intersex or when it comes to gender, because I think how I look at each character, I kind of look at the essence of what the character portrays. And then if that actor, regardless of who they are, embodies that essence, I'm going to hire them regardless. And I think it's to piggyback off of what Mackenzie said earlier, is just being careful that whoever you do hire, they are not the token. They're not the token. They're not the gimmick, because it's very easy for, and now I'm kind of talking about bigger institutions like Stratford. It's very easy for them to cast BIPOC or trans or gay, lesbian folks as the main character. But once again, is that a gimmick? Is that going to be a mandate in your, I was going to swear. I'm not going to swear.
You still have
is this going to be a mandate?
The one. You have the one.
Yeah. Yeah. Is this going to be your mandate for the rest of your programming? Or is it that one show that like to show people, look, we're socially conscious? And I think that goes for every other theater company as well that's not spearheaded by a BIPOC person or a gay person or a transgendered person. So I just feel like, sorry, I'm very passionate about this.
No, great. No,
I honestly feel like, once again, as a director, I would hire them, but I would be very conscious about, am I doing it for the right reasons? And it has to be from a pure place, not for, hey, I need a transgendered person in this because I need to write off a grant or just something like that, which sadly I do see a lot in our theater community. So,
Emma J, do you have a?
I also just wanted to quickly say that if a director is being smart and conscious of the world that surrounds them, I think that hiring people who don't exist in the binary is the smartest, because they have a wealth of knowledge that from the binary, because of like the way that society exists. So I think their knowledge and the things that they bring into the room is like way better, because they know how to operate in this world that wasn't created for them. And I think that is so rich in content, and it's rich in storytelling, and it's rich in like moving theater forward.
Oh, it just adds another dynamic, another layer to whatever character they're portraying as well.
Absolutely.
Or whatever project they're doing. It just adds, I don't see it as a negative thing. It's always a positive thing. So.
Always.
Sure. Mackenzie?
Well, I mean, to piggyback off what everybody's saying, I mean, my first thing is give everybody the opportunity to play what role they want to play, which means if somebody identifies as a transgender male and they really want to play Hamlet, as a director, you let them come in and audition for the part, and if they match what you're going for and they are the best candidate for the role, you hire them. Plain and simple. And I mean, on top of that, as a director, if an actor comes in, performer comes in, and they identify as non-binary, you communicate with them and go, which roles would you like to be considered for? Because I'd be open with them and go, what would you like? Because I'd happily work with you, but I want to make sure that I'm not gonna offend you in any way by casting you in a role that you don't feel comfortable in. So being open and having that communication with these people and letting their voice be heard. And the last thing I can say, as a hetero white male, there are some stories I should not tell, which means like I may have a concept about wanting to do a transgender Othello. Am I the person to tell that story?
Yeah.
I'm going to use the F-bomb here, so fuck no.
It's your one. It's your one.
It's the one, I've used it.
Locked in.
Wait a second.
So
Check out.
fuck no. It's not my story to tell as a director.
I didn't do it.
I know I did it as marketing manager. What have I done? But like, that's not my story to tell. And as artists, we should always be conscientious of not appropriating and being like, well, I have a concept and I want to do it. Mm-hmm. Sorry. Some stories are better told by somebody who actually lived that experience and has a better knowledge of that moment. So I don't want to say stay in your lane, but like know your know your limitation and be honest with yourself and go, am I the right person to tell this story? If not, then be like, I have a great concept, Stratford, but I'm not the one to tell it. But I think you can go find someone who can tell this story, and you're happily can use this concept on my behalf. And go from there. And I also think if a director is going to tell a story that requires a transgender, non-binary, intersex, otherwise gender non-conforming performer, you cast those people. You don't go casting heterosexual male or female performers, and you got you cast appropriately.
Halle Berry.
Yes. Or like I'll even say like in that. I mean, I still can't believe this story is actually true, but when they were going to be doing the Harriet Tubman film, the producers thought about casting Julia Roberts as Harriet Tubman. It's like, seriously? No!
I don't think I even heard about that. What?
That is a thing. They've been trying since the mid-90s to do a Harriet Tubman film. And when the film was in development in the late 90s...
They were going to make Mulan originally as all-white cast.
Yeah. See, no.
Mulan.
Once again...
But that's a whole nother can of worms too right now.
Yes. That is a whole other can of worms about people telling whose story. My biggest thing is, as a director, if you're going to have a concept that's going to require an actor to be transgender, non-binary, intersex, otherwise non-gender conforming, you find those performers who can tackle that role properly, versus just being like, I'm not transgender, but I would prefer you not cast me in a transgender role because I can't tell that story properly. If that makes sense.
And for sure, you should have your research done and be consulting with people all the time.
Yes,
and throughout the whole rehearsal process, checking your steps and making sure that things are okay. Because it's not enough to like just consult with someone at the beginning of like the audition process and never check in again with your research. And it's not enough to start your rehearsal process and check in with someone on the first day and not through those 3 weeks that we're rehearsing. And it's not enough to be on opening that something is wrong and you haven't checked.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
You're constantly
not
have to check in. I absolutely agree with you.
Yep.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
And our queer theater specialist, Graham, ending us off on his answer with this question.
Oh, lots of good stuff I want tackling. I did have a lot to say for this question, but honestly, I don't even want to say a lot of it anymore because I've just got so many notes on what y'all lovely people have been saying. I perhaps will, though. There are certainly some roles when I thought specifically on trans, non-binary, intersex, and otherwise gender non-conforming as the question specified. Like, okay, what roles could they be? I think dramaturgically, you can justify anything. Like, any casting choice can be supported with good enough research, with good enough dramaturgy, and this might be novel to some artists out there, but creativity, ingenuity. We are creative sorts. We can come up with creative solutions. And if you see an actor who is non-binary and you're like, wow, you're stellar. I really want you as Juliet, let's say. It's a no-brainer. Cast them as Juliet. Duh. I think it raises an issue with the question, similar to what we discussed about gender, is do you acknowledge it? Do you make a big deal of it or not? And what are you saying if you make a big deal about a non-binary Juliet, or if you simply cast the actor as Juliet and then don't address their personal identity? Are you missing on anything? Are you not doing justice to the role, to the performer? Like, there are so many considerations with this question. I am also big into, if you have a character who is of the queer community, any of the letters, cast someone to represent that role, because there's just that one extra layer that we don't have. There's one hurdle you don't have to jump. You don't have to have Scarlett Johansson learn what it's like to be trans and then be cast as someone trans. You can just cast someone trans who knows what it's like to be trans and play someone trans. Look, I am expediting the process right here. See? Like, works
Jared
smarter.
Leto did it.
Yeah.
Who we don't We don't associate with that name anymore.
Just also, yes, I think that having diverse directors is important, as it really comes down to the director to make the final call when it comes to casting choices. But not only that, but I don't want, let's say, like straight directors to start saying, we're going to cast queer performers, and then they don't create a safe space in the rehearsal hall. That is just criminal, if you ask me, because like queer individuals can be subject to all sorts of different sexual harassments and problems in the workplace. Like you couldn't even foresee that coming. People who seem perfectly sweet could be completely transphobic underneath it all. Or like there could be some very deep-seated homophobia in whatever theater company or in the admin or like anything. And you can't always put on like queer productions at Buddies. Sometimes like we're going to have to expand it beyond the Church Wellesley district if we are going to, if we're speaking of Toronto, if you want to create this kind of utopian world where everyone accepts everyone and you break down the barriers of that kind of restrict Shakespeare and relegate it to straight white British theater, which it most certainly has, I think, transcended its origins, because you can see productions. I saw this wonderful production of The Winter's Tale. I didn't understand a lick of the language because it was Yoruba from Africa. And it was all out of order, and the costumes were big and vibrant, and the culture was so completely different. And I loved it, even though I didn't really understand a lot of it because it was in the dialect, the new language. But I could appreciate it, and it made me want to look into that culture more. And that is how I personally believe you break down these walls, you break down these barriers, you make the world more, cohesive. Like you inspire conversations, you show people new things. And honestly, I don't, as much as I love Stratford, I don't have much faith in them changing radically very quickly towards more BIPOC representation, more queer representation, or let's blow some minds here, BIPOC queer representation. Like, okay, all right, I've gone too far. It's like,
No. Haven't gone far enough.
Exactly.
So, spilling some tea up in this joint, I also agree, not all stories are for all storytellers. I really want to tell a queer Othello. If anyone who is non-queer tells that story, I'm going to have problems, and I'm going to have a couple words with them. First of all, you stole my idea. Second of all, who the fuck are you? Oh, sorry. There's my one. And at the end, I'll just conclude this question with, I think that, as I've said, any casting choice can be justified with good enough dramaturgy. So I think there are a lot of fun options you can play with, like Puck as this genderqueer figure who kind of does not adhere to any norms. It kind of like can present one way in one scene, another way in another scene. Same with Ariel. Like you can have that these are very fluid characters, but this gives the risk of othering. I think Feste as a non-binary character would be cool, because Feste, like fools in general, they have this wide breadth of experience. They usually have the biggest world picture in the play. So wouldn't it be fun to cast someone who has that wider non-binary perspective of there being not part of the binary society, but having been part of it? So I think it works with the Fool and King Lear, Feste, Puck, Ariel. What would a trans Desdemona say?
Yep.
What would
also her death?
Juliet say? What about Richard being trans, whereby, like what about Richard being trans and saying like even or asexual? Richard is ambition. Richard is climbing. Richard doesn't care about anyone except themselves. And so what would that say about Richard having been a woman who then transitions to male in whatever way that he can, to then, because it's like, well, as a woman, I would never get this far in this time period. But as a man, I have the room. I have the pants. I got the dick. Like, what would that Richard say? There are so many things you can play with Shakespeare because it's so ambiguous. Shakespeare is really great at kind of eluding strict, hard and fast definitions. It's like, is Shakespeare pro-Catholic or not? Is he pro-monarchy or not? Is he pro-queer or not? Like, there are some things that support it. There are some things that pull away. So it really depends, what as the production are you going to highlight? And that's where I'm going to drop my mic.
Mic dropped.
And Susan picking it up.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm so happy for this panel, because that's what I say a lot, and I've had a lot of debates and discussion against it, where I absolutely agree with you, Graham. I think Shakespeare's so malleable, and that's one thing I love about Shakespeare. It is malleable. The sad part is that we haven't seen it being malleable, and I've had lots of people dispute me, saying, no, it has to be in its pure form, blah, blah, blah. And all I kept thinking is, I was gonna do an F-bomb. It's FN 2020, like, come on.
You still can. You have yours in the bank.
You got your one. You got your one.
do.
Okay, it's fucking 2020.
Yes.
Like, honestly, if you have a problem, like, in its pure form, and Emerjade said it earlier, theater is constantly evolving and changing. It's always going to be constantly evolving and changing, and also we have to take into account too, there's no right or wrong way. Like, I may not like this production, but I'm not going to say this is the wrong way to do it. I just don't like it. So we have to get off of this, like, the right way of doing it and the wrong way of doing stuff. Like, it's a way. And there's 10 million ways of doing this one way. And that goes for directing as well, I think. Because whenever I work with an actor, I always say to them, if you don't like what I'm asking you to do, that's fine. There's 10 million ways of me to ask you to do this one thing. We just have to tap into that way that you like and that I like, and we make it a consensus and agreement.
Yeah.
And yeah. Sorry, Graham.
No, yeah, finding that synergy is so important. Graham?
It's vital. If there's chaos in the cast and chaos in the rehearsal hall, it's going to show up on stage. 100%.
Absolutely.
100%. I mean, we've all heard stories about Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams in The Notebook absolutely hating each other. And I actually have not seen that movie, but I would love to see it, knowing that these two were fighting like cats and dogs the entire
they
production.
Fell in love after.
Yeah.
And then they actually fell in love.
They did. Yeah.
Like, it would have been so much easier if they had gotten along, like, to tell this great love story. But the actors hate each other. It's a fun little lore of the story. But what I was going to say is, I kind of agree with Mac's father when he sent you to Stratford to kind of learn some of the roots of theater. And Shakespeare is part of the roots. I don't think anyone can really argue that it does have this magnanimous presence in theater. I'm not saying it's right, but it does, because, British colonialism has touched so many parts of the world that it has been ingrained in at least Western theater practices. So I think it is a good proving ground for actors, because they are marathon kind of plays. If you do a full unabridged Hamlet, that is like a 4.5-hour play, or 4 hours or whatever. That's intense. Understanding language, taking this older poetic language and somehow giving it meaning so that it can be your own and you can speak it as clearly as I'm speaking to all of you right now. That takes skill and study, and you have to sometimes pull things right out of your... but I think it's a good proving ground. It's a good thing that I remember a quote saying, like, if you can act Shakespeare, you can act anything. And I would agree with that, but I don't think that I agree with Shakespeare constantly being played the same way. And then I think we need to tap into its malleability, its ambiguity more, and say, like, okay, so you've seen a million Hamlets. I don't care. This is this Hamlet right now for 2020. Absolutely. And it's going to be different, and it might not even use some of the same lines. There might be new lines. There might be, the same line repeated 13 times. If that's the important line, who are you to say? You're not the director. You're not the performer. You are not on the creative team. You don't get to say that. You're the audience. You are watching this production. and I'm using this production to say something.
Mm.
And that can go for any of the Shakespeare plays. And I mean, honestly, if it takes using colonial plays to deconstruct some colonialism, isn't that great? Isn't that some wonderful Inception spite right there?
the amount of explosions that Emerjade's fingers have gestured for us today. Yeah. Well, this has been, wow is definitely the statement throughout this entire panel. This has been such an invigorating
Susan has something.
Susan.
Yeah, Susan, come on in. Yeah.
Okay, because I know we have, it's only 3:30, so we do have some time. So I just want to quickly tell you the production that I saw of Midsummer's.
Yeah.
Please do.
Yes.
Okay, I've seen 6 or 7 productions of Midsummer's. So it used to be my favorite play, not anymore. But I did see it in Czech Republic, and it was done in Czech. And this is when I was still learning the language as well. But I was just blown away by the fact that it was done in Czech and it was done in the proper meter. Like whoever translates for the Shakespearean plays, there's, I think, 1 or 2 people in Prague that does it. They still do it in the meter, which is, I don't know how they do it, because Czech is very guttural and very, a lot of it's just a complicated language. Anyway, so this Midsummer's was done by the National Theatre of Czech Republic, and it was really interesting because, like I said earlier, it was done in the context of World War II. And so when I first was watching this play, I'm like, huh? So basically what it was it was done as, it's a rehearsal for the troops. So it's a group of actors performing Midsummer's to the group. So, but these were done by older actors. So all the lovers were middle-aged or more than middle-aged, older, seniors almost. And so the first couple of scenes was just them reading the first act. And I'm just like, oh my God, is the whole play going to be like this? Just a bunch of actors reading.
Why am I here?
Yeah. But then bombs start dropping on them and they have to go into the cellar, which is the dream world. And it turns into a completely different time era where it's a dominatrix, S&M, Titan and Oberon are all in it's jungle music, drum and bass music, and the music composer of this took actual lyrics or text from Midsummer's and made it into a jungle piece, or it was really, really well done. And so there are feathers, there's latex, there's sex swings, there's and this whole underworld is this, and then there's a new set of lovers. So to complicate even further, they see the old actors playing the lovers see reflections of themselves as young. And so instead of 2 sets of lovers, there's 4 sets of lovers. And they kind of, whenever they did that lover spat, they did that dirty dancing thing where the old Hermia was behind the new Hermia, and they were dancing with the old Demetrius with the new Demetrius behind, and they would interchange their text. And it was so beautifully done. And Nick Bottom was a famous actor, but his costume was an actual donkey, but he had a face, and so he had a face behind his head and a face and his actual face. And so he has 2 faces. So what they did was they had a reflecting pool also and a mirror on the ceiling, or a drop down mirror. And he would play with his own reflections, so his back head and his forehead, and he would talk to the audience, either reflecting from the mirror or to the audience.
Oh my God.
And it was so well, it was crafted so well. And then the show that they put on the troops is the Pyramus and Thisbe play. So that was funny in itself. But also, Puck and all them were also in this whole latex drum and bass feel to it. But it was just beautifully done. And they celebrate because they think the war is over. And then the final scene is a bomb dropping on them, killing them all. And Puck is burying all of them burying them. So it turns into
Wow.
a very dark play. But I remember coming out of there thinking, you can do Shakespeare like this? And I had no clue. Like,
Right.
because I've done it. I've seen Shakespeare done so many times, classically done, or the way it's written. And I was also really young. I was in my early 20s when I saw this. And I remember coming out of that theater stunned and shocked. And then at the end, too, they all come out, and one of the lullabies that is, who sings it now? Is it
Titania?
Yeah, they made it into a beautiful actual lullaby, and the whole cast comes out and they sing it at the end. There's a whole soundtrack that I did buy, I think, but I lost it in transit. But it was probably the most beautiful play I've ever seen, and I saw it 3 times.
Wow.
And I came out of there thinking, how, like, I've never seen Shakespeare done like this before. And even I've seen multiple other Shakespearean productions after where they did they did Twelfth Night. They did it in like Siberia, and they actually had, and that's the National Theater again. They actually had dogs on stage, and they had they just did a different interpretation. And maybe it's because I was in Europe and especially in Czech Republic, I think plays have been done so many times over, and Canada is still relatively new compared to them, that I think whenever you deviate from the classical play, people aren't used to that here, especially I still think Canada is very conservative. And so, whereas I think Czech Republic they've seen so many of these plays over and over again that they try different interpretations of it, and everyone loves it, or not everyone, but people are more open to it because they want to see something different. And I've seen so many weirdo plays there that I love, and and then I come back here and I see some theater companies try, and then, which I always, matter if it's good or not, like, at least they try. But then I also see other people like slamming people for it, like, why are you trying something different? And, why can't you just do what's written? And I'm just like, ugh, it's boring theater. So yeah, it's boring theater. So that's why, yeah. So I don't know if you saw, I didn't see it, but it was the production of Midsummer's, and it was done for Harbourfront Theatre. And I think it was like 4 hours, and it was 3-4 languages. I don't know if you got a chance to see that.
No.
But they did like a Bollywood version of Midsummer's. And it was, I didn't see it, but I heard it was really, really beautiful done.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, thank
So
you
anyway, sorry, that was
sharing that. No, that was a wonderful tangent on, definitely that could even open up a whole other panel of how, Canada and the States and Western theater alone can definitely augment the crafting and staging of these pieces and that
training of their people.
Yes. Yes, indeed. This panel has been so incredibly lovely. All of the points made today, like, this is quote worthy, folks. Like, I know I'm going to watch this and be like, I am writing this down as in my quote book, because so many things were hit on today, with varying perspectives, all under the lens of 2020 theater. This is what theater should be now. And with COVID sort of as this overarching blanket, theater is also going to evolve triple-fold than how it already is. So having these conversations as a troupe that we have today here, like that, this is the future, and this is going forward. So thank you all so much for contributing your thoughts and opinions on each and every one of these questions and going above and beyond sharing with us today. Before we officially sign off, we're going to give the opportunity for everyone to plug yourselves on your socials, or if you have any upcoming projects that you would like our audience members to kind of know and hear about. So, Graham, you wanna kick us off with your concluding plugs?
Ooh, I don't really have any plugs because I don't have any artist accounts at this point in time, but definitely look for me in the coming future. I'm going to be getting really hardcore into playwriting, and so hopefully you'll see me in the theater scene. And I do say that theater will come back. We may not be able to meet together as a group because of COVID, but theater has been existing for thousands of years. It's going to continue existing for thousands of years, because even if the lights go out and we lose all power and we revert to, like, you know, having to suddenly give up our smartphones, we are still going to be able to gather and put on a play. And film may be big right now, but watch out, because theater is a lot older.
Yeah, exactly.
Preach.
Very well said. Susan, where can people find you, or what are you up to in the coming?
You can't really find me anywhere because I'm kind of a dinosaur when it comes to social media. I'm on Facebook, but you have to be invited to be my friend. So I can't really plug it. But if you ever see a web series ongoing on Facebook, right now Facebook is being a douche to us, but there's this 5-minute sketch show that we do, or it's called The Isolationists. So if you ever see it, please, it's a comedy, and they're only 5 to 10 minutes long, and they're really silly. But there is one episode that is really harsh. It starts off as a comedy, and it's all about being in COVID times. But I think the trailer is actually called White Fragility and Sensitivity. And we touch a lot about, not a lot, but we do touch upon George Floyd and BLM. And it's quite different from the rest of the episodes. The rest of the episodes are just really silly, but this one isn't. And it's a following arc on the different characters. So that's one plug. Another plug is I'm part of the writing program in Cahoots Theater. And so because unfortunately this year is canceled, Tanisha has given us the opportunity to expand. So instead of just a 1-year program, now this writing program has now into two years. So we're going to do a public reading in 2 years' time. So look out for my name and look out for it. I'm writing about the Anti-Asiatic League and the Pan-Asiatic riots in 1907 in Canada. And so we're going to have probably public readings of it, hopefully, knock on wood, 2 years from now. And I'm also now, but it's not going to be right for 2 or 3 years, I'm creating, and I hate saying device, collective piece. But it's a site-specific piece. We don't really have a name yet. And sorry, I'm rambling, but
it's okay.
We're still working on it. But it's going to add elements of, like, it's questionable that it's theater, because we're really questioning, is it theater, is it performance art? So
great.
Always a good question.
Yeah, definitely. We'll look out for those. Emma Jade, how about your plugs?
You can find me on Instagram at em.er.jade. That is my name phonetically broken down. You can catch me over there talking about my mental health troubles or wins. And you can catch me there being very Black. And you can catch me there with my modeling, and I update about shows. You can catch me on Twitter at Emerbabe, EMERBABE. I'm not there much, but I am there sometimes, and I like to think I'm funny sometimes, and that's cool. And don't add me on Facebook either, unless you know me.
Nice. And Mac, how about your plugs?
Well, I mean, you can find me on all social media platforms at Mackenzie Horner. Just look for the ginger-haired photo. You can try and add me. Just send me a message being like, hey, saw your work, would love to connect. By all means, fire me away a message. Just don't randomly send me a thing, because I probably will ignore it. Other than that, the biggest thing you can find me on is my podcast, Before the Downbeat, which is all about musical theater. As of today, Saturday when we're recording, we will have just released our Miss Saigon episode, where we had a huge debate about that musical and just
I wasn't on it. What?
I know, Susan. I know.
Oh, shots fired. Susan's coming for you, Mackenzie.
Don't worry,
I actually auditioned for it, so way back when.
Okay, so that's the bigger conversation.
My sister's a not performer, and she got through to the second round. I was very, very, very young. There was no way in hell I could be in that production.
But yeah, Miss Saigon, that's the latest one we have coming out. And then when this comes out on Wednesday, we'll be getting ready to reveal what our next musical will be. I will give a clue for anybody who cares, but it's a musical about an island. So there you go. Wonderful. I think Susan may have just figured out what it is. So but there we go. Yeah. Before the podcast, we have lots of fun guests who come on. And then, yeah, it's just a great, fun time on that show. So yeah, give it a listen if you want. Other than that, follow me at Cup of Hemlock as well, where we're doing all types of fun things, whether it's a play review or a roundtable or an interview. We have lots of great digital content coming your way. So stay tuned. Don't change the dial.
I will pick up the torch from that. You can find me on my artist Instagram account at jillian.robinson96. You will find some singing excerpts, advertising of upcoming projects, and probably pictures of my baby niece and nephew. And so upcoming for me, Cup of Hemlock has not released officially what their next polished read will be, but I will be coming on as stage manager and performer for that. So I'm very excited. It is a collaboration with Sweet Tea Shakespeare, which is a North Carolina-based Shakespeare company. We're collaborating with them for this polished read. And in the future, I have a lot of roles and responsibilities with Sweet Tea Shakespeare from the stage management side coming down the pipeline too. So keep an eye out on my artist account for that if you are interested. And as always, yes, like, share, subscribe, Cup of Hemlock Theatre. As Mac was saying, just to reiterate, we have a lot of more reviews and interviews and panels such as this one coming down the pipeline. It is very important in today's climate to continue having these community building conversations. And as a group of artists, I think it's so amazing that our voices are still strong, if not stronger, during this pandemic through doing having afternoons and recordings like these. So thank you so much for listening. Stay safe, everyone. Be kind to yourselves and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Remember to shower and drink water.
Thank you so much.
Yes, drink water, cheers, shower, do all the things. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.